Welcome to everyone, but we need to start our meeting, our regular meeting of the Board of Education, May 25th, 2022, at 7 o'clock, and we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. So I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Lindsay, second by John. Any discussion, changes?
Is Corey still here?
Just kind of was that, was there something you wanted to add?
I think Corey was gonna ask if 11A could be moved to right after item 5.
Before public comment?
Yeah, right before public comment, if we could do 11A. Just because one of our staff members who was here for the last meeting. Is that okay?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
That's okay with me. Is that okay with everyone? So we'll take that.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll approve the the agenda as amended to move item 11A up just below item number 5. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good. Item number 3. Welcome to all of you. It's so nice to have you here. I understand we have some presentations from our elementary school senate, and I'm going to hand this over to Tom and Deb.
Okay, try and get this low enough for our younger learners over here. So, good evening, Dr. Shook and Board of Education members. I have a wonderful group of students with me from Brewster School here today. There are some of our second graders who are going to be talking about our newly implemented Student Senate that we implemented this school year. So prior to this year, we didn't have a Senate, so we developed that as a team. They worked with Mrs. Carrie Chernovitz, who's one of our reading interventionists, and she's unable to be here this evening. But she worked to develop the program with the grade 2 teachers and all of the students, and they're going to share what they've been doing all school year.
Good evening. My name is Coco Morello. I am a second grader in Mr. Bonavio's class at Brewster School. Thank you for inviting us tonight to share about the school senate at Brewster School. This year we started a student senate at Brewster. The student senate goals are to build leadership skills, develop ethical values, strengthen our school community, and become active participants in our community. New learners were elected to become senators every month by their classroom peers. Each month, senators were elected based on the core ethical values of the month. The core ethical value I showed was kindness. Every week, we had a meeting during our lunch or recess time with Ms. Chernovitz, our school senate advisor. We discussed ways we could support our community through outreach programs. Hello, my name is Olivia Bull, and I am a second grader in Mrs. Goriev's class. I will be sharing some of the activities that helped our community in the fall. In November, the learners at Brewster School wrote over 200 letters for veterans in our community. We shared our thanks with over 100 veterans. We also hosted a food drive in November to help those members in our community that are in need. Lastly, we did a toy drive during the holiday season, and we donated to Yale New Haven Hospital.
Hello, my name is Jamie Carr, and I am a second grader from Miss Lundstrom. During the month of January, we were role models and showed the school appropriate behavior in the lunchroom. We also wrote thank you cards to the medical workers from Middlesex Hospital to show our appreciation for their hard work during the pandemic. Lastly, we delivered Valentine's cards to our veterans in West Haven at the VA hospital.
Hi, my name is Kaya Ai, and I'm a second grader in Ms. Rodriguez's class. From March through May, we fundraise for Down syndrome, autism, and apraxia awareness. We sold bracelets and sent profits to the 3 organizations. For Earth Day, we delivered seeds to the classrooms for students to plant at home that were donated by Country Flower Farm in Middlefield. This year, we learned that giving to our school and community is important. It helps us develop our self-confidence, leadership skills, and responsibilities toward the community. Thank you again for allowing us to come this evening to share how Brewster School has worked to give back to our community this year.
Thank you. Thank you, Coco, Olivia, Jamie, and Kaya. Very proud of your accomplishments. Thank you for sharing.
Well, first of all, awesome job, Brewster Senators. Nice round of applause. And I have the privilege tonight, actually, they're going to introduce themselves, of welcoming our 4th grade senators from John Lymon School. And I'd also like just to take a quick moment to introduce we have 2 staff members who facilitate our Senate, Mrs. Howes and Mrs. Abbott. So they're here to support our senators and appreciate all the work they do to make things like Student Senate happen. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our senators and let them tell you a little bit about Senate at John Lymon School. So thank you for having us tonight.
Kiki, you first.
Good evening. My name is Kiki Ettinger, and I'm a senator from John Lymon School. This is Louisa Grant, Sam Janice, and Talia Girgenti. They are also senators. To become a senator, we had to write a speech about why we wanted to run for Senate and why we would make a good senator. Then we had to present it to the class. We made posters about ourselves. Some included a catchy slogan. Each classmate voted and could vote for 2 people. The voting was done either on Google Forms or the original way on paper, and that is how we became senators.
Hi, I'm Louisa, and I'm going to tell you about our Spirit Days. In Senate this year, we came up with our Spirit Day ideas to make the school more fun. The Senate surveyed classrooms for ideas for Spirit Days and brought them back to Senate meetings. Then we voted on them. Kids in the classes have loved this year's ideas for Spirit Days. We had Crazy Hair Day, where we got to do fun hairstyles. Then, for the 100th day of school, we dressed up fancy, or we dressed up like we were 100 years old. During some of the Spirit Days, we raised money for various places in our community. For example, on Nature Day, we collected a $1 donation. We raised $100 and donated the money to Connecticut Forest and Park Association. Mr. Little, the director of the development, was so touched by this, he came and visited us during a Senate meeting. He spoke to us about trails we could use that are near us in Rockfall. He also brought us some stickers, books, tree identification booklets, and he took a picture with us near our nature trail. On Nature Day, we got to do fun activities like go on a hike, or draw or create a nature-themed picture. Some classes even played games with words and ideas. And on Friday, we are going to be celebrating Blanket and Book Day. We are bringing in a blanket and book and are hoping to read outside. These Spirit Days help make school much more fun and enjoyable. It's what everyone looked for, and we're so thankful we could have them.
Good evening. My name is Sam Janice. I'm a senator from John Lymon School. This is Kiki, Talia, and Louisa, and they are also senators too.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, honey.
That was not your fault.
That's not your fault. Can you start raising up, Sam?
I'm Sam, and I'm going to share about how we do the morning announcements over the loudspeaker. The whole school every day on the announcements, we talk about upcoming events like reminders during Go Far at recess. Another thing we announce is birthdays. We also sometimes have a mindful moment to get ourselves ready for the day. We end with a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hello, my name is Talia, and I'm going to tell you about a really important job of the John Lyman Senate. Our classmates can come to us with problems, and then we bring them back to our Senate meetings to figure out the solutions. For example, we have a recess cart filled with playground equipment. Some of the kids have been asking for another football, and they told the senators. Students also bring ideas to the Senate to make our school a better place. One time, many of the balls on the recess cart were deflated, and the problem was brought to the class senators. We solved the problem by writing a note to Mrs. Holland, our PE teacher, and she inflated the balls. It takes a lot of responsibility to make sure we can solve these problems and help our classmates and community. Thank you all for letting us speak and share about our school, because so many amazing things go on there.
And thank you, Kiki, Louisa, Sam, and Talia. We are honored to have you come and share, because we do know a lot of good things go on at school. Thank you for sharing.
I guess we don't have to tell you not to feel obligated.
Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you for your
appreciate
service.
it.
Great job,
Thanks
guys.
for coming out.
You have them every time. Nice way to start a meeting and smile. Item number 4, recognition of our CAVE Leadership Award recipients. And I have Mrs. Stone.
So, do we have a certificate for them here?
I do.
Awesome.
I just
So
remembered
I'd
that I
like
had
to
them
ask
behind me.
Ariana and Hope to come on up here with me. I'm going to say some nice things about you. And it's all true and well deserved.
Want me to hand them out after you talk about it?
However you'd like to do it.
We'll wait.
We'll wait. Okay. Squeeze you can squeeze it. Apparently I need it shorter than our youngest learners. So this is the 26th annual CAVE Student Leadership Awards, and this year I asked 8th grade teachers to nominate 2 students who exemplified leadership in our school and in our community. And they gave me the names of Ariana Edinger and Hope Giamateo. And that's how you say your last name? Good, I should have asked ahead of time. I had a note to myself. I'm going to start and tell you what they wrote about Ariana. They said, Ari is a strong academic student and extremely helpful to her teachers and peers. She actively participates in class discussions and works really well in a group setting. At Strong, she is involved in EDGE, Best Buds, Strong Newsletter, Debate Club, Witness Stones, and the Generation of Disciples, a group that she started this year. Outside of school, she is involved with the American Heritage Girls, Shoreline Youth Concert Orchestra, Invention Convention, and Paper House Theater Productions. So this definitely is well deserved. Now Hope is our second one, and she too is equally deserving. And what the teachers wrote about Hope is that Hope is a strong academic student and she's very kind to her peers. She is organized, participates in classroom discussions, and isn't afraid to respond, even if she isn't sure of her answers. At Strong, she is involved in the Witness Stone program, and outside of school, she is involved in cross-country, softball, basketball, skiing, snowboarding, and mountain biking. She is also involved in the Girl Scouts and Junior Ski Patrol. She has earned several awards for athletics and the Core Ethical Value Kindness Award in grade 7. I present to you Ariana and Hope.
Congratulations. I think Mom wants pictures, so turn around.
Congratulations, Ariana and Hope.
Great job.
Very proud.
I think congratulations to Kenina and Sam. That was a double ceremony between
Yeah.
Kiki and
It's
Ariana.
because we have so many kids.
No, it's not.
You just keep, yes. I'm looking forward to getting them next year though. So, our high school CAPE Awards, it looks like girl power, but our boy Gage Ravelli is not here tonight. He is at track, so on June 8th, we will go over Gage and talk about him. So we're gonna leave him out tonight, but the rest of our girl power, you guys know this young lady, you know her well, you've worked with her all year, but the Coggins Regional High School CAPE Student Leadership Award was given to Nora this year. For more, you already know the reasons, obviously, she's the board reporter, but she does so much more, so I'm gonna read that, and then I'm sure tonight and next on June 8th, you guys will get more information about what she's ending up to doing and where she's going and all that fun stuff. So, Nora was an easy choice for the CAPE Leadership Award because she truly exemplifies what your organization stands for. She's committed herself to leading her school over the last 4 years and has used her leadership role to bring about change in the school and the community. She served as president of her class for the last 3 years and also the president of the Ecology Club. She's a member of your Board of Education Wellness, Wellbeing Committee, Equity Committee, and is on the Principal's Advisory Board. She started an initiative to create a local composting program in her town and also served as an intern for the Durham Middlefield Youth and Family Services. Additionally, it's longer than theirs because she's older. Additionally, Nora helped develop a local diversity, equity, and inclusion campaign in 2021 and volunteers as a stage manager for a student-run local theater group. Is it Paper House? It's Paper House. Her future interests include the medical field, so she has worked as an associate at Wesleyan this past summer, or lab associate, sorry, at Wesleyan this past summer, and was a volunteer in the Cancer Center at Hartford Healthcare in the summer of 2019. Somehow, Nora manages to juggle all of these things along with her academics and has earned an overall GPA of 4.52. Well, that was the latest number. I don't know if it was recalculated. While taking honors and college level courses. Nora is an amazing young woman and someone who serves as a role model for those who want to make a difference in the lives of others. So this well-deserved honor to Nora.
All right, I'm going to give Nora the certificate, but I have to share this one anecdote. I'm not going to bust on her because she's going to UNC Chapel Hill. We'll talk about that later. But many of you have been through our reimaginings, and Nora was one of our first to go through last spring with the group, and then came back as a community builder to help others go through it. And that's really awesome that she did that, on top of everything else that was mentioned. But what I want to mention as an anecdote, just to give you another little bit of insight, is at the end of those sessions, we do a survey. And you know, people are tired, and so most of them, they just check the boxes, and they don't actually write any tangible suggestions. But Nora actually observed that part of the way that I structured the afternoon wasn't really syncing or working the way that it had in the spring when we went through it. And so I made the change, and it made all the difference with the next group. So I emailed her and I thanked her and I told her that. But it's just, that's the kind of thing that she does, and I just look forward to seeing where you go next. And I'm very proud to have been a part of your journey for the short time that I have. So congratulations.
Congratulations, Nora. Excellent.
Mom, do you want a picture with Mrs. Stone? It's okay if you do. Oh, I'm all for the picture. It's important.
Yeah.
It's a memory.
Can you put it next to the mic?
Hold on a second. Hold on, Mike.
That's a question.
This is Bob. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Sorry I couldn't be there, Nora, but I want to thank you and Gage for all your work on the Wellbeing Committee over the last 2 years. You were the first students to work on it and have led us through both the pandemic and a lot of other critical issues over the last last 2 years. So thank you very much and good luck in the future.
awesome way to start our meeting. So proud. Item number 5 is our reporters. Nora, I know, is here. I believe Rebecca is here as well. And I think Logan is at
In
track.
track.
He's at track. So, ladies?
Okay, so first I'm going to do a general update, and then I'm going to fill you guys in on sports, because Logan couldn't be here tonight. So we have about 40 kids helping out at the field day at Memorial and Brewster School. We had prom at Cascade in Hamden for the first time in 3 years. The class of 2022's valedictorian is Gabe Ravelli, and our salutatorian is Ava Orfano. There was a student versus teacher obstacle course on Monday held by the Global Health class. Money fundraised went towards people in Honduras. And students of the AP Gov class held a voter registration drive yesterday. There's also a blood drive coming up. Oh no, never mind on that one. So in terms of sports, baseball had a very successful season, going 14-6 for the regular season. They're seeded 8th in Class S for states, and they were seeded 3rd in Shorelines, but sadly lost to the 6th seed Cromwell in a 1-6. Softball was also successful this season, going 12-6, seeded 12th in Class S states. They were seeded 4th in Shorelines, but lost first round to 5th seed North Branford 4-8. Both baseball and softball states brackets will come out later this week on Thursday or Friday. Boys tennis saw lots of new talent with 6 freshmen joining the team this year. Senior Zach Breyer was supposed to play in the Shorelines tournament. However, he was chosen to present the torch to start the Special Olympics along with senior Makai Watson. Girls tennis, sophomore Piper Remillard successfully defended her Shorelines Conference individual champion title yesterday, defeating her opponent 6-2, 6-1. And then the whole team is going to states this Friday, and we're going to be playing Fairfield Prep, maybe? Some school in Fairfield, I'm not sure which one. And then golf, the golf team had a good season with lots of new players signing up for the team. Senior Paul Murphy tied for first at the Shoreline Conference Championship, shooting a 69 for the co-championship title. And then Becca's going to come up and tell you guys a little bit about track.
There's a lot of sports stuff, let's split it up.
Thanks, Nora.
So boys outdoor track, the boys track team had a very successful season so far. They won the Running Rams Invitational on May 13th, scoring 90.5, beating out the other 24 teams by 30.5 points. The team is competing in Shoreline's Conference Championship in Old Saybrook today, where Logan is right now, where they hope to win the championship again after winning the indoor title. The boys' Swedish relay team, consisting of Dylan Quincy, Ryan Newberry, Alex Weisenkothen, and Will Dallas, qualified for Nike Nationals this past Friday at Danbury Dream Elite Invitational. Senior Will Dallas is seated first in Class S for the 800, and 9 boys have qualified in their individual events for states. Now, girls outdoor track. Girls outdoor track has also had a very strong season with many personal records. Sophomore Ali Bigu is currently seated 1 foot above everyone else in Class S states. Junior Katie Farr is projected to win the 400 meters, and sophomore Grace Harkins is projected to win the 100 dash at Shorelines. The girls are also competing at Shorelines Championship in Old Saybrook today. Now, I'll share with you some stuff about music. So the music department had a really big week last week. The band went to Virginia Beach, they performed and they did a workshop. The choir went to Disney and also performed and did a workshop. So that was last week. It was an incredible experience. And we returned on Friday. Saturday? Friday. I don't know what day it is anymore. We have the Memorial Day Parade coming up on Monday. The marching band is going to be performing full uniforms, full instruments. We haven't had this in years from COVID and rain, and so that's really exciting. And finally, the concert that's supposed to be tomorrow has been postponed to June 7th. So the choir is really excited to have their final concert. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura, Rebecca. Very good. You have one more board meeting, I believe, June 11th. Yeah, we're gonna miss you, but good luck.
June 8th.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
Bob's
June
here.
8th. June 8th, I apologize. June 8th.
Okay, Bob.
If anybody hasn't heard Becca sing at a jazz concert, you should all go either look on YouTube or find it. She has an incredible voice and has really a strong performance, and we're going to miss her at all the concerts in the future. So Becca would really love listening to you and watching you sing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number, which is new, has been moved up. I'll call it 5A, otherwise I'll get confused with numbers. We have the vote to approve the geometry textbook request.
So moved?
Second.
Well, we're not voting on it.
It's
We're
just-
just- we're
it's
having-
just the
yeah, we
process
will be
of
voting
this.
on it. So we have a presentation. I know, I apologize. We have a presentation first and then the vote. How's that?
I'm just watching the match.
I mean, you can vote without presenting, right?
Sold.
Perfect. All right, we're looking to update our geometry textbook. Right now, we have updated Algebra 1 through AP Calculus for our honors courses, so we're really just looking for the last piece of that series. It's a series we've used for the past, some of them are only a year old, some of them are up to 10 years old, but the series has been very rigorous. It provides good support for our students. It does have an online component that it does connect, so the students can use CalcChat, which provides them worked out solutions. It provides them videos to support their learning. It also provides performance tasks for the teachers. It does have a STEM connection with every concept that it goes through. So it tries to help even just us come up with performance tasks. It allows the students to see the purpose of what they're doing. And we've had really good success with this series in our other honors level courses. So we're really just looking to finish the piece of the puzzle. We had budgeted in the math department budget $12,000 for this, and right now the textbooks are quoted at just over $7,200, so it worked out nice that it was underneath what we had expected it to be. And our plan is to take the books that we are currently using for our geometry honors course and to transition them into our geometry CPA course. The textbooks that we're using are great books right now. They're just not quite reaching the level we would like to reach with our honors students.
That's great.
My
Any
eternal
questions?
question with textbooks always is the digital format. Are there separate chapters in PDF format? What I find a lot of times is they'll offer you the textbook, they'll have the digital format, but it's one humongous 700 pages, and it's posted on their Google Classroom, and then they have to thumb through 700 pages to find where they're actually supposed to do. I just want chapters. Some of them don't do that. Do you aware if this one does?
We don't actually have access to the geometry one right now, but the algebra 1, 2, pre-calculus and calculus do. So we are, since it's the same series, we are under the assumption that the geometry one does have the same setup.
It's good to hear the performance tasks included into that. It's wonderful.
Any other questions? Okay. Now we need a vote to approve the geometry textbook request. So moved by Lindsay.
Second.
Seconded by Missy. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Good. Bob, thank you.
Thank you.
Aye.
You got Bob on it. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. Item number 6, we are down to public comment.
And no one's here.
And no one is here, so.
Oh, maybe, wait.
Oh,
We
have
sure
some-
do.
Oh, we do.
There's sleepers hiding in the
I
corner
know,
over there.
geez, everyone leaves us. I'm sorry, I don't need a microphone. I gotta pick it up. I really don't. I really don't.
That's
So-
not true. They're
That is
watching
so
online.
true. What's that?
It's for the people that
Oh,
are
it's for the
watching
people
at home.
online. Oh, okay. So my name is Henry Bugay. I'm the president of Benchwarmers. About a year ago, we started to invest in new scoreboards. They're up, they're operational. So we got the bill the other day. I'm here to present a check to Doug and Kim. So we have a check from the bench warmers for $15,000, that's our part. Pay that off, so we're $30. Yeah, Doug, come on over. You want-
Hold on, I need a picture.
Okay.
Lucy, you wanna come up here too?
Come on, Lucy.
Go ahead. That's part of being the person. Just jog over a little bit. So
Well, no, we
like-
figure Lucy in the middle now.
Yeah, but Missy's
Oh,
hostage
I'm
right
sorry.
now. Lucy in the middle?
I didn't want to move you, I'm sorry.
I don't know why you're this way. You gotta put it, there you go, like, there you go. It's crooked. Oh, yeah, sorry. No, you're hiding her face.
I know, we're hiding your face,
Oh, my
Lucy.
goodness. I can't help it, I'm a
Every bison burger you buy at the Durham Fair goes towards good causes such as this.
Yes, it does. I'm like.
And
Sorry about that.
just as a programming note, we,
I can't believe
we got word that they were coming
Yeah,
kind of
thanks,
late in the day, and so
when it's time.
we will on our next agenda
Celebrate life.
actually ask the board to formally accept the donation, because that's part of board policy, but we were kind of last minute on this one, and they wanted to come, so.
We wanted to pay our bill. We have a bill, we'd like to pay it.
We thank you
We don't want to
guys.
have it hanging over us.
The scoreboards look great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Thank
good.
you guys for,
And they
thank
work.
you for
Thank
all,
you.
for
They
everything,
do.
thank you.
Thank you.
Cheeseburgers at the fair, always good. Okay.
Well, they're gonna leave too. Go for it.
No, that's it. You're gonna leave us all alone? Like cats and dogs?
You guys, where you going?
You left one of your bench warmers. You sure you don't want them?
Oh, you get to eat? Okay, item number 7 is approval of minutes. Before we put out a motion, are there any changes for the May 2nd or the May 10th minutes? Any amendments?
I thought I had one, but hold on, let me just double
Okay.
check. It might be. No, I'm good.
Okay, so then the motion could be to approve the minutes, the district meeting minutes of May 2nd, 2022, and the special meeting work session of May 10th, 2022.
So moved.
So,
Second?
Lynn, how about with John this time? John, move,
Yeah,
and
take it.
Missy, second.
All right, okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
opposed? Good, okay. We have committee report, Student Achievement Committee. Lindsay, did you wanna?
Because Corey's here, do we want to let Corey just?
No, usually they.
Yeah, board.
Between you and
As
Jim.
long as you have these committees, this is how it needs to work.
It's only an hour ago.
I've been here, so I'm
my
gonna.
Wait, I'm
push
pulling
it
that
along.
one out.
Wait,
I like it.
I can always support you though.
It's okay, just gonna grab my notes out, John, it's okay.
Get it done.
So we just actually met just before this, and we had gone through, a few different things. We had gone through, some new high school courses, and Deb Stone gave a pretty lengthy, program studies between related arts, a new bridge program for special education. We did go over the new, African-American, Black, and Puerto Rican Latino Studies course. They shared with us that this summer there's some extensive training that's going to be going on with the social studies teacher at the high school. It's going to be a lot of work on her part to be able to go to that. And we talked about CERC writing the curriculum for it, and
That's state required.
which is a state required course to be offered. We talked about some minimums on class sizes for that, and right now they do have some interest in the course, and they'll have to see when schedules come out. And a couple of us have asked for the materials on that so we could take a look at the new course. Math didn't have too many changes, just changed some wording from statistics to data analysis. And then we went over some of the English electives and how we can work towards having all these and still being able to meet the needs of the teachers and the students. And we went over how some of this can go into naturally with Doug's rematching program. And then we talked about performance tasks at the high school and middle school. I don't know, Jamie, you want to
Sure,
talk a
yeah.
little bit more on that?
I'm sorry.
Oh, May Kavanaugh?
Meg Kavanaugh, wonderful, yeah, she had a presentation on what are sort of integrated into the math program at all levels, grade levels, correct? Performance tasks where the students have an opportunity to fit their learning style, I would say, in a better way. The outcome is not just take the big test at the end of the thing and let's see if you have learned what you're supposed to learn, darn it. So it's a lot of like thinking on your feet exercises that involve math. I mean, we saw lots of nice pictures of students doing things like, you know, shooting a basket, and there's math involved in that, and equations. But more of it's about the relevancy. You know, any education is meaningless unless it means something to them. And this has a better way of suiting all the kids as much as possible. Yeah, we did acknowledge that there are still some students that want to just study for that test, and you know, we're still embracing that. I don't think that has gone by the wayside by any means, but I think there's a lot more engagement. I always think people learn better when they're actually on their feet, thinking and doing at the same time versus just.
Sorry, I have no idea what that
But it was impressive, it really was. You know, a lot of different ways people can learn.
Underscoring your whole learning on their feet. Yeah, and really applying it to their lives, and taking math as not just this number that they have to memorize, and applying it to things that they're doing every day. I think she had talked about car interest when they were buying a car, and how they can take that and apply it to their student loans and what they would have in student loans over the course of like all those years. It was really interesting to see, and I think for retention, I think it's gonna be really great to see a lot of these things really applied to their everyday lives.
Real life applications for the skills that they have to learn.
Sure, the climate that I'm in the trade school environment, it's every single trade. We have 17 trades in our building, and everyone is asked to, you know, sort of reinforce and emphasize the math component as well, applicable to that particular trade, that you know, they can earn money doing, you know, not quite as difficult math sometimes as what we see, but you know, there's some reality basis to things.
And then Meg had the slideshow that she had shown to us. It was amazing. So I'd like to send it. I had asked her if she could send it to the board. Also see if we could post it somewhere.
I'll send it to the full board.
Yeah, it'd be amazing to get it out there, because it really does show that what's been happening in math for so many years really does tie into reimagining. It's not just something that it's jumping into. We're really looking at this from something that works well with what we have already, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Also, could a copy of the new course programs be sent to the board members?
Sure.
And I don't know if this is something that could also be sent through Parent Square for you know,
The
maybe
course
at
of
the high school
studies?
level, so, yeah, is that something that's normally sent?
I think
So
Deb probably does, I don't know. I'll
Yeah,
ask.
and I
She may
believe,
do
and I
that.
believe
She
it's
does.
posted.
It's probably
I think it is
Yeah, I
posted.
think what
It's
she said
probably
was
on
she
the
was gonna send
website.
you guys not this, but the whole that has every course in it.
Oh, okay, so
Right.
But
so
she
it's
could
all
send
in
that
there.
separately
I was
too,
gonna
if you
send
guys.
you the
No,
program
that's
of
okay.
studies,
As long as
like
it's
the
all out
huge
there.
program of
Yeah.
studies.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Another piece, I'm sorry, were you done?
No,
I
you
just
go.
wanted to add the little piece.
I can do
here.
it if you want.
Okay.
You know, we from the community side, we've had a lot of people ask about test scores and how it relates to what's going on, especially at the high school and the middle school. So we had asked Corey, like how that works, like when that gets assessed. And so that would be in the fall when we have SBACs, NGSS, and SAT scores, and then really taking a look at focusing on those standardized tests versus the internals, and getting some hardcore, you know, data from that and being able to work from there. So we'll see that in the fall.
There's definitely a contingent of the population that I've experienced that they don't mind paying the tax bill, they don't mind, they see that number of cost per student, but the backup is, I wanna see results for that. And it's, again, it's not an entirely valid measurement, as we all know, but we've gotta certainly respond to those. But the fall is the time that we do that, so.
Yeah, it will be a lot more comprehensive in the fall and make more sense than the pieces that you have available at this point in time, so.
And to that point, Jamie, I think what's incumbent on us as we roll out more of the strategic plan is to capture other measures that are also important to people and let them stack aside these test scores, because if the test scores are the only thing we ever share, then we're almost sending the message that we think this is the most important information, and maybe the public thinks it's important because we say it's important. These things weren't always around. And people still had a way of gauging how good the schools were. So, I think we play a role in that. We can blame it on the state or the federal government, whoever, all we want, but we present and we interpret and we let people judge us, to your point, based on that. By the same token, we don't shy away from it. If we're struggling in one of those areas, we just say it and we
Can I
work
add
on
to
it.
that too?
Yeah.
So I think there's many ways to show accountability, right? And so it's not just through a standardized test score, but there are so many ways in which, you know, we could provide accountability results from our students, and really looking at the big picture of the entire district, and, you know, in as so much as, you know, how many students are in performing arts, you know, how many students, you know, are in sports programs and different things. So I think those are all pieces of accountability that are also important, in addition to, you know, how do our students academically perform, so.
Any measure that we can provide of, you know, college and career readiness. You know.
Well, I think that's the point
Growth
too.
piece of that, and that's something that we
Growth
really
is
had to
huge.
translate to parents and people, but I think they're getting it now, that the growth piece is like, especially through COVID and other things, like, were we able to make any impact on moving them from here to here? It doesn't mean they're gonna get this score or that score, but I just feel like that, I mean, I just went through this with my board and my community last night, and so growth is just so important to translate to people too, because it's what's really going on. Are
And
we
that's what
moving
we've
people?
focused on. So as a district, growth really, you're absolutely right. You know, growth is where you want to look versus achievement.
Right.
So growth over time. And because of COVID, you know, there was some steps in the scoring, so they had to, you know, recalculate how they were going to project their growth scores. But that is where you want to look. You want to look at growth, not necessarily binary achievement scores.
But in that growth, is there standards that they have to meet, obviously?
Yes.
And if there
Yes.
isn't, what
Yeah,
is
there
being
are.
done
Absolutely.
to get them up to that level?
Absolutely.
Also, just listening to the students that spoke today also shows you
We got some
what's
great kids.
being done and how, what these children are exposed to. I mean, we had second graders who speak better than adults. I was like, you know, amazed, and the fourth graders were, if you didn't know how old they were, you would have thought they were much older. It's just, and that's just as much of a testament as to what is going on in the schools as the scores. That's why it's important to have them.
Even some of the kids that are so little, to see, and to know some of them, to see little Sam Janice, like, get the wrong paper and completely not be fazed by it and pick it up and keep going. Like, I see that with him at Scouts, but it's so nice to see at that level, because a lot of kids can't do it, you know. So it's nice that we're doing it here, so.
Okay, we're down to number 9, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Lucy. Number of things to share tonight. To start, and Lucy and I deliberately didn't mention this at the start of the meeting, which might have been more appropriate because, you know, Tom and Deb had said, you know, maybe don't say anything about the school shooting from yesterday when all the little children are here, because who knows how much they've heard or their parents, and so we wanted to honor that. And, you know, you see these children come in and your heart has to go out to these families and this community in Texas. So, you know, I mean, first and foremost, whatever else we're doing when we're processing all of this, I would think we all just feel for those families and for those employees of all the children and adults that were impacted by that. And it's really hard sometimes to know what to do with that, but I really want to applaud our team, our administrative team, our counselors, our school resource officer, because today was not an easy day, and I mean, it shouldn't be. And it wasn't easy for our learners. It wasn't easy for a lot of our staff members. It wasn't easy for a lot of us. We had some tears even on our team meeting today when we were trying to process all of this. And a number of our families, many of you probably, because it just brings to light, my gosh, you know, if it could happen there in that little community, could could it happen here? So, you know, it does make us more vigilant in reviewing the safety and security protocols that we have in place. And, you know, I haven't talked a lot about this since I've been here, but I really want to applaud this district because I'm guessing most of this was kind of in the wake of Sandy Hook. But, you know, we have a lot of very good protocols and we have a lot of good people. But, you know, you need to stay vigilant in those protocols. And so this is a reminder to do that. And I think a second piece of this, which is not just for our staff, but it's really for all of us, and that is when you hear something's happening, maybe, that doesn't sound right to you, step up and say something. And I know that's hard for a child to do sometimes, or even an adult who hears it from their child and doesn't want to put their child in an awkward position. Those things are important potentially in protecting us here. And I think what is most troubling to me, I think I put it in the message after the Buffalo shooting, is, you know, here we have these two events in like 10 days span, and at least what's reported to be 18-year-olds as the perpetrators. And, you know, I don't know how old Nora and Becca are, but they're probably 18 or 17, near 18, and so are a lot of our learners. And you know, it's hard to imagine any of our children here doing something like this. But when something like this happens, it really makes you think. And so I know you guys are going to think I'm kind of a broken record on some of this reimagining work, but if we can make part of our transformation to be much more relational and much more connected to our learners, even those that don't seem like they want to be part of anything, that is actually going to help us prevent these things, at least amongst the children and the adults that are part of our environments. And so, you know, we're gonna double down on that. But really, I wanted to thank everybody, and even Mark Hesseltine, our SRO. We talked last night. You know, he had asked additional troopers to be present and available at our schools today, and you know, that's just a presence, but we think it's important and it's reassuring to a lot of families, and we heard that from a lot of our staff, and even from some of our families. So I just didn't think it was appropriate to talk about anything until we kind of put that out there, and just to say that we're going to continue to make safety and security a top priority for us, but also to say, and I said this to the staff today, and this is not to scare you, it's just to tell you the way things are. Unless we are prepared to turn our schools into essentially prisons, where, you know, or secure government facilities where there's a guard gate and kind of a hardened entrance like you kind of saw in Washington, D.C. after 9/11 and a lot of places, unless we're willing to go to that extent, our schools are always going to be vulnerable to these types of attacks because we do things like recess. And so we can have all the protocols in place during the quote-unquote school day, but people that really want to do us harm, they're going to know when we unload buses and dismiss and go out on the playgrounds and do all of those things. And I still stand on the side of when we start taking all of those things away, outdoor gym and sports and just all the things that put learners outside of the building, like I'm not sure I'm going to be part of that because I don't know if that's school anymore. So I'm on the side of let's be safe and vigilant in supporting all of these things. And like I said before, let's try to do better with establishing cultures where everybody, not just children, but especially children, but also adults, community members, employees, feel like it's safe and comfortable to report anything that they feel is suspicious, even if it's on a coworker. I mean, I was talking to one parent about it today. You know, how many of us have flown since 9/11? And maybe we get sick of this announcement that comes over and over again. Don't leave your bag unattended. Don't leave your bag unattended. Well, you know what? If I see someone's bag unattended for like 5 minutes, I'm reporting it to security because it's been drilled into my head, and I think that's a good thing. And it might inconvenience someone, because maybe they just went to the bathroom. But like, I think that's our collective responsibility, not to get anyone in trouble, but to safeguard some of these things. And so if there are any parents watching, and I don't know who's out there, you know, if you're comfortable, if you could use this opportunity, as sad as it is, and if it's age appropriate for your children, to have this conversation with them, because we say it at school, but we need to reinforce it. And you know, our counselors, they're also available. They were today, and they do a great job of helping children who are kind of struggling with this and wanting to know that there is a safe place for that. So let me pause there and see. Jen, do you want to add anything about the counseling piece?
No.
Okay. I don't want to make you cry either. I mean, it's been a hard day for things like this, and seeing these young children here tonight just kind of brought it all home, I think, to me and probably to many of you as well. So moving on, and shifting gears completely, I'd like to thank the board members and the staff, and not just the staff that are here, but other staff for the recent work on the budget. I know that having our budget fail, hearing people criticize it, us asking the board to give us a number to lower it to, us going back and trying to recommend to that, and then explain to you our rationale, and then you all hearing that and accepting that and sending it back to the public, and getting a positive result last night, not unanimous, but still positive. I just think that's a win for us. And you know, I'm still new to this budget referendum process, and now new to a budget failing and then passing. But one of my takeaways that I think hopefully people hear and understand is that we heard the community. They said what we came out with was too much, and they said we needed to think about reducing staff in kind of the declining enrollment pattern that we have. And we may have not done that perfectly, but ultimately, you know, that's why we have budget referendums, to listen to our community. And I think in the process, we've probably gotten a lot more people's attention about this. And my hope is that regardless of what the budget does next year, that, as one of our speakers said a couple meetings ago, that we can at least get more people to vote in them, even if they vote no. I just think it's important that more of our community be engaged in this. And we don't bear that responsibility alone. I feel like that's a community-wide effort, and we also have community groups and organizations that can do that. But for our part, I think you know, we can try to do a better job of getting more people to the polls and letting them know what's in our budget. And certainly I'll be committed to that. I think we all will be.
I think something too, if you don't mind me saying, you know, just sitting there, and I was at the polls all day in Durham, and the number came through, and it was a positive result. So you're happy that the budget passes. But for me, it really did say that it was very, very, very close to Middlefield, even though it's a total of both towns. But it does show us that we have a lot of work to do. A lot of people weren't happy, even though it was positive. So
it was the process that a lot of people weren't happy with, and so they were going to vote no the second time out, even though they were maybe in favor of the number. That it was the process, that we could have answered those questions and done those things right up front, had those conversations like we always have in the past. I mean, that was what I took away from that, was that some people were, I tried to talk them out of it, but some people were going to vote no matter what because of the process. Sorry, I just got my braces tightened today.
And I think too, it was content.
Difficult.
You know, we had, and I think between now and the budget, we really can identify those reasons and really pull it into the start of our budget and see where things are then. And
the information sheet that we put out for the second budget, if you remember, we had a gentleman from Middlefield. He was flabbergasted because he didn't really have any information. Richard Adams was there.
Yeah, well, you know what? You got to remember, he doesn't hear very well.
But
and I did try
I
to
did
talk
hear him loud
him
and clear,
out
though.
of it.
It's like we have that sheet of paper, and I guess it was distributed on social media. That was our way of getting it out there, like what changes were made. I don't have a solution, but if we go through this again, have it printed, you know, a second and third time, how are we going to get that information? And what's the new budget out there? Why is it different from the previous? Because people just are not getting it from the meetings, they're not getting it they're not coming to district meetings. We see it's an echo chamber in there. I think the majority of people actually saw that. The results might have been actually even more of a plurality of people voting yes for it. We didn't really know. Second time around, it's sort of a, how many people got out to vote? We don't know what's gonna happen at these votes. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
Well, and communicating with the public is always something that, we have to really look at it. It's not that we can't, just because we have a referendum. I mean, we have to put out something from the district that is something from the district, but there's other work that can be done around that that's not, like, sent out from the district. But that, I did have to agree with him about that. I mean, just for full disclosure, he's my dad. So, but he was here when they formed this district. He was here, before ID. He was here, and he's very committed to it. And that was his only thing, was like, how do I know? Like, I get it that you put something out the first time, but how do I know now? I'm not on social media. I can't figure out social media at 81 years old. Like, I'm not gonna do, like, how do I know? And I get you can't send it to every house, but just tell me how I'm gonna know. Just tell me where to go to find out, because I don't like to vote on things that I don't know. He doesn't like to do anything on anything he hasn't read like 70 million books on. So, but I get it. I get what he's saying, and I had to say to him, you're right. I'm here. I'm hearing it. I'm in it. So, I hear you, and you're right, Jimmy. I mean, that's all he was saying. He wasn't saying like you have to give us a, War and Peace or anything else, but we just like to know something.
And I think even yesterday I struggled with it because it was such a low turnout that I was like, a lot of time in your hands when you're usually a busy person. So I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking, what could we do? And then what have we done? And both town clerks had sent out emails. But some people don't get emails.
And what, the town clerk sends you an email? You really looking at that?
I always do.
I know you do. I do.
Just saying,
Sure,
we also, we did look into, and I had called Doug and I said, could we put it out on Parent Square? And I didn't know if that was something we could do, and he found out that was not something we can do.
Yeah, once it's.
To put the information sheet out on Parent Square?
To let everyone know
No,
that
we
the
can't.
vote was happening.
We can't be, and it's because.
So not true.
Well,
Yeah, it's in
I'll tell you how it was
statute.
explained to us. It's because we're using our access to a certain
Right,
constituency.
you can't use our system. It doesn't mean we
That's Parent
can't do
Square,
it.
yeah.
Right, we can't use our own system because we pay for it.
Right, and
right.
not only do we pay for the system, but we have a targeted segment of the community that the rest of the, and so it would be like, we're sending it to them,
But not everybody.
but not
Oh, no, I hear
everybody
you.
else.
Yeah, you
And so
can't-
even if
yeah.
it's neutral and it just
Parent
says,
Square,
hey,
no.
all we
Yeah.
wanted to say was, hey, there's a
It's
vote.
happening,
Go
yeah.
vote, and
My idea was because I heard it on the announcements for Coggin when we were sitting there, I'm like, oh, well, they announced it.
Well, and the reason we can't do that is we're suffering for someone else's bad behavior. I mean, because people don't just say, hey, the vote is out there. So we're suffering for someone else's bad behavior. No, sorry, I misunderstood. My bad.
Yeah, and I'm totally open to any suggestions on process. We essentially used the same process last year that we used this year, and there was a pretty significant increase last year, and it passed pretty easily. So it's hard to know. I do think there were more people that came out this year that identified the staffing piece. I do think the fact that the population shifted in Middlefield and made that budget go way up, which is something we can't control, but still impacted maybe some of the thinking that was there. And for better or worse, I think this Fieldhouse issue, I'm not just looking at Missy, but like this Fieldhouse issue divided people in our community too. So we may have had, and then we had this health insurance increase that kind of, we have no control over either, and then that had to get it up even higher. So we were kind of behind the 8 ball where we started, but certainly any suggestions about process that we could improve, I think Kim and I are all ears to that.
It's also been a number of years since we've had more than one budget referendum. I don't recall the last time. I know I've been on for 6 years, and I don't think during that 6 years
I think year
we
one,
did.
there was a couple votes, but since then it's been
Right, so
first time,
the
yeah.
process for the second referendum is always, it's a shorter term, so therefore it kind of ties your hands in terms of being able to send anything out.
Right.
But if I do recall, I believe that the budget, the revised budget was on our district website.
Oh, yes.
I believe it was on the individual towns' websites. I didn't check for sure. I know there were some post notices that were posted on the greens of both towns and around the community that there was a budget vote coming up.
Yeah.
And, I know there was stuff on social media. I mean, there's a lot of different avenues. And plus, it was discussed at our meetings, which are videotaped, and they're still out there, you know, you can always go back and they're long, but you can go back and listen to some of the discussion. So, I mean, there are some avenues that are out there, but maybe we need to think about
Yeah, and
another-
to the Parent
another
Square
way.
piece, when we weren't in the dead period,
Another
you know,
additional-
we did send out that one pager to our employees and to our families, so it was out there, but then we couldn't resend it once we
Right.
got into the dead period on that. But again, just to go back to where I started, what I was really specifically commending was, however we got to that first failed one, I'm very pleased we are where we are today, because we were kind of under the gun, and I think there will be those that criticize that maybe we didn't get it perfectly right, maybe we cut too much, or maybe we didn't cut enough, or maybe we didn't cut the right things. But we do have a budget, and the one thing I know is that until we could say that, there was just a lot of uncertainty amongst the ranks of employees. And now we're able to kind of move forward based on those decisions, including looking at our retirement incentives and all the things we're going to try to do to minimize the impact to job losses. All right, my next thing is just a reminder that at our next meeting, among everything else that we're going to do, we are going to be recognizing our retirees. And as of today, there's another individual, Corey, to add to that list. And so we will recognize her properly at the next meeting, and you'll have a chance to do that. But, you know, since she's here and you guys are here, I just wanted to publicly thank her for all of her time, and to say that I am partially angry with her and partially happy for her. More the latter. I guess that's all I'll say about that at this point. So
You gotta celebrate when you can. You gotta get out there when you still got it going on, all right?
yes. So, and congratulations to you on your new opportunity. Also, we had told you all, and Meg and I just missed it, and we all kind of missed it in our planning. We had a few policies that we were going to have for adoption tonight, and we just didn't have them queued up, and we didn't want to send them to you late. So we're going to send all those ahead of the June 8th meeting. Is that when it is? Yeah, the June 8th meeting. And those are the ones that came out of policy committee last time that weren't approved at the last meeting. So we will get those to you. And so my last item may take a little bit of time, but I think it kind of needs to. And so I have little folders. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
Is one color better than the other?
No, unless you like green better than orange. The contents are identical, and you know, I try to do things digitally.
Wait, and everybody's.
I didn't have enough for all the staff, just for all the board members.
Oh, okay.
The staff's already seen this.
Oh, okay.
And so
We had one.
there are 4 pages in there, but
Oh, okay.
what I want to let you know is we at our next meeting are going to ask you to approve a fall 22 calendar for the Board of Ed and Board of Ed committees. So first, let me tell you why we're going to recommend that this be a fall-only calendar. So what I've discovered, what we've discovered in looking at some of the state statutes around board calendars is that the state has a rule that says a board needs to adopt its calendar by January 31st of each year. And so I came here and saw that we were doing this in January and didn't quite understand why we were doing that in January for a calendar that didn't start till the next July and then ran into the following June. So basically, in January of 22, we didn't, but we would have adopted a 22-23 board calendar. And what I've discovered is that, may not surprise you, we are just one of a handful of districts in Connecticut that doesn't do a January to December calendar, and that's why the statute is geared towards that. So the spirit of the statute is that by the end of your kind of first month of the year, you've identified all the other meetings that you're going to have, regular meetings and committee meetings. And that makes sense to me because that's how we did it every district I was in. in Virginia. And so what is problematic about the way that we've done it, in my opinion, is that it makes you kind of look way into the future, and it doesn't allow a lot of flexibility, because once you publish this thing, then you just have to cancel everything that you're not doing, or reschedule, or schedule special meetings. And this is especially problematic when you have the number of committee meetings that we have scheduled, most of which don't meet on that schedule. They're kind of like placeholders. And for every one of those, when I say we, I really mean Meg, and this is not just about Meg, but I just want you guys to understand the work behind this. Meg has to reach out to the chairman of the committee or the chairman of the board and say, is this going to meet? Is it going to meet at this time? And then that all has to be noticed and put out. And I'm not sure that's the best use of her time or the chairman's time or anybody else's time that heads a committee or anything. So I really do advocate for this idea, and we met with Lucy and Lindsay, and they agreed that what we should do moving forward is, when we come back next month, is let's adopt a calendar for board meetings and committee meetings to get us through December, and then at our December meeting, let's adopt a calendar for all of 2023, and then that's what we'll do kind of moving forward. And then we'll be in closer proximity. If we want to make changes, we'll be kind of closer to those changes. So if you go into your folder now, there are 4 things, and I'm going to take them in order. So the first one says Fall 2022 Board of Education meeting schedule, and it has 6 meetings listed starting July 6th and ending December 14th. And all of them start at 7 o'clock except the July 6th meeting, which is at 6 o'clock. This is exactly what we've been doing year over year from July into December. And so that's why that one looks like that. The companion document behind it says Fall 22 Board of Education Committee meeting schedule. And it lists ERC, student achievement, policy, well-being, and utilization. Now, I know those aren't all the committees that we have, but these are the ones that we've been scheduling through this process historically, and this is the frequency at which we've been scheduling them in that kind of fall semester, if you want to think of it that way, up through December. So, for board members that have been on for a while, you're used to seeing a school year one that would also have the companion ones for the spring. But based on what I just described, that is what we would have there. Now, there are 2 other committees, finance and building, that don't get scheduled because those kind of happen as needed. And so they're not listed here, but they get scheduled as needed. So if you flip over to the 3rd page,
Does that include the newer committee, or we're not putting on pension yet?
Pension committee, is that a board committee?
That's not a board committee.
It's not, okay.
Yeah, and technically the building committee isn't either, but I mentioned it just because it's been kind of thrown around in the same kind of discussion for the board. So what happens in the new proposed fall board schedule is that everything looks the same, except the start times are now all 6 o'clock. Now that's a proposal again, and we're not having to figure this out tonight. It's for your thought and discussion between now and next time. And you'll also notice all of them except July 6th have the footnote that if we need it, we can start and do a work session. And in my mind and in talking to Lucy and others, think about that being no longer than an hour. So, some of the things that we've historically done in committee meetings, like the Student Achievement Committee that we just had, could be in this venue, presented to the entire board, broadcast to the entire community. You guys have heard me say this before. I don't have to repeat all that, but that's kind of the why behind some of this. And then the other footnote is on December 14th to make sure that we would adopt the calendar for 23. So then you flip to the 4th page for the committee meeting schedule, and you're going to see only one committee listed. That's the policy committee. And that's because, in my opinion, we can do away with all the other committees and bring everything else through the work session process and or a district advisory setup that we have. And so all you see are 3 committees. Now, you may question why I'm even putting the policy committee on there. I think there's a lot of policy work that we can and should be doing during the year. It's work that staff has really not been able to pay enough close attention to because of everything else that's been kind of going on this year. And we're bringing those to you as we can, but we think if we had a policy committee that was willing to take this up in earnest next year, we could really roll up our sleeves and basically not just update new policies, but go through the whole manual and look at some policies that maybe we haven't looked at for 10, 15 years. I've had to do this in every district I've been in, and it's painful, but once you go through it, then you can kind of stay on top of it. And I do believe that one of the board's core responsibilities is policy work. And so if there's a committee that should be active, and this would be a working committee, it would be policy, and I would envision us having that committee meet all of those times and having lots to bring back to the regular board. So these have been scheduled strategically in between the regular meetings, so there's adequate time to get whatever comes out of policy committee to the full board in time for the non-committee members to really understand that and have it kind of be presented. Let me say something else about the work sessions. I mentioned that it could take the place of some of the committee work. There's something else that will naturally fall into that, and we've talked about it a bit, and some of you know because you're part of some of these teams, but since March, we've had these 6 action teams that have spun up as part of our draft strategic plan and our reimagining work, and those groups are still just kind of starting, but we feel the need to periodically, and possibly even at every meeting, bringing an update from one or more of those teams. And one of the reasons I bring that up is those teams are inclusive of lots of stakeholders. And so one of my feelings is that one of the reasons the board had committees was to get more stakeholders involved in the committee work. And my feeling is we've got even more stakeholders involved, and many of them are the same stakeholders that have been on some of these committees for years because they're the kind of people that want to be part of this. And our hope is that these folks would step up and come to these work sessions so it isn't just myself or the administration or even the board members that are part of some of these teams doing the updates, but you can actually hear from some of the other staff that are part of that. And that will be a work in progress, and we'll have to see because an hour isn't that long, and maybe it won't be enough. The third thing that could come into that are simply other things that pop up for the board that we just want to have a longer conversation about and not kind of clog up the regular agenda. So again, those would all be live streamed, and I think that's a benefit. We've heard the transparency thing, and I think that would help. It also stop us from having to do so many audio recordings and a ton of extra board minutes for committee meetings that get posted in lots of different places, and everything would just be kind of in one place. So the last thing I'll say about this, and then I'll open it up to questions, is I am not suggesting that you just have to choose either what we've always done or what I've recommended here. It could be something in between. You know, if there are some of these committees that you want to continue into next year because you're concerned about a particular issue or topic, obviously we'll do whatever the board wants to do, but I kind of feel like this is the future we should be aiming for, whether we can get to it. And the first calendar is only for 6 months. So we can do an intermediate step into that, but I guess I'll pause now and just see, are there any questions about what I've presented and kind of the why and the mechanics of how it would work?
Well, I think a few things on these, we talk about like the public participation and then how some of the action teams can, you know, be combined or the same type of people. But I want to make sure that this is something we all want to do. We need to make sure that our current public members are a part of this. I don't want to like change things and so that our reps for say utilization aren't a part of utilization anymore.
I'm glad you brought that up because I do think that's important to consider. And I think in your thinking to also consider the different dynamic between people, anybody who can choose to go through our reimagining orientation and then choose to join 1 or 6 or anything in between and be part of these teams versus people who have to be appointed and invited by the board to be part of a committee. and this is no disrespect to the board or the way this has been done, but I like an opt-in for community members, and also, these are, like the committees, they are working teams. And so, the people that show up are the people that care and want to be there, and so my hope with what you said there, Lindsay, which I totally agree, is for those that haven't plugged into the reimagining, but I think most of them have already, to let them know that, you know, they actually have a greater opportunity, I think, to be influential, because when we put somebody, say, on a utilization committee, and then that committee kind of meets intermittently, I think that can be very frustrating to say now they don't feel valued. Where our perspective is, we don't want to have a committee meeting just for the sake of having one because it's on the calendar. Whereas these action teams, they are meeting. And, you know, not to put a plug in for any of these teams, but Kim and Ken, and I think Lindsay, and maybe others, are part of the kind of business efficiency operations action team. And that's where I see a lot of the work that historically went to like a utilization committee would go, because it's gonna look at all of those things and budgets and technology. And so I see a lot of people being interested in that work. And that's just, again, this is one superintendent's opinion, but I think your point is a good one, and I think we don't want to disenfranchise anybody.
Right.
But only if you guys are comfortable. And
So Bob, is Bob still on the phone?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, I'm just checking in because I want to do a reality check about what committees were originally designed for. I mean, I think that, yes, this whole action team thing is great, but in my experience over a really long time, and when other people that we know were here, my mom, you, lots of people, that was not, the intention of committees was not to bring other stakeholders into the mix. The intent of committees were to have board committees to do work around certain things. And sometimes you want a committee of the whole because everybody's gonna show up, finance, budget, but that these other things that have grown up, I agree, they need to be outside of the board, they need to be part of reimagining. But I don't know, Bob, I mean, if that's your experience, but it's been mine for, I don't know, 20 or 25 years, that committees, you don't need 1 million. Some boards have 1 million, but you want to pick what is it that you want people to do in a laboratory, you want the board members to take and then bring back to the committee. You don't need everyone on the board to do policy. You don't need everyone on the board. You have to do it, but you don't need everyone to look at it. So that's my understanding of committees. I don't know, so I'm throwing it to you because you've been doing this for a bit.
The committees basically were.
Hold on,
Hold on, Bob.
Hold on, Bob.
We're taking you to the microphone. So people can hear you.
Actually isn't
Can you bring it back here?
Broadcast live.
I don't know.
Okay.
Can we
It's
move
Bob
that mic?
Moore from the microphone.
You can move it. That one should pick them up.
5 years ago, were basically work groups.
You have to put a little bit
that
closer.
focused on
5 years
the
ago.
issue and developed
There you go.
plans and programs for the rest of the committee to deal with, the rest of the board to deal with. Middle to Bob Garmatino had a proposal that was
That's different.
argued against for a couple, almost for a year. That we need to get more people involved in the work of the Board of Ed, and pass a policy change to say that we could have up to 2 people on every committee.
Right, so that was what, 5 years ago?
Except for personnel and policy.
Less than that, less than 5 years ago. Okay, just want to check the history, that's all. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
And so, people then were, they had to go through and get appointed to the committee, so people actually wanted to be on these committees and actually did work for them. So, as Lindsay was saying, that these people have made a commitment to work on these committees, like Missy and others who have joined these committees before they were board members. John DiMatteo is on several, and others have worked very hard to be part of the committee. And so I do think that you have to deal with how are they going to react to not being part of something. So, I think that's an issue that we're going to have to deal with. I think also, I do, as I said to Doug earlier, that I do have concerns about getting rid of some of these committees because I think they give an opportunity in a less formal sense for people to have discussion. It's very hard for the public to have discussion with the board over an hour if the issue is going to be complicated. And I think as you look at the issues that we have, the utilization issue is going to take the decision on what to do with Lymon over the next few years is going to be really, really complicated, and it has going to require us to listen to a lot of input from various people around the towns, and it's not going to happen in an hour before a board meeting.
Right.
So I think you got to be careful about thinking about, what are we facing over the next year. In addition to reimagining, we also have some structural stuff that we have to actually deal with that, well, reimagine may help or may adjust, but it's still a matter of some bricks and mortar and dollars that we have to deal with. The other thing that you said, Doug, the policy committee did evaluate probably 40% of the policies that are out there in 2019 through 2020. And we went through them in detail and amended them. So it may not be as big a load as you think there might be.
Well, that's good to hear.
Some of the policies aren't needed, for sure, but others are there.
They still need to be looked at, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the other thing about committees, we are the only board in the state that has outside people outside the board on our committees. And it was a push by Bobby and Martino, and I don't disagree at all. I think I completely agree that we need to have groups of people, not just at a meeting where we're saying, we are as a board, we're convening something because we want to hear you, and the usual listening tours and public hearings are not serving that purpose. So to your point about these groups, but there are real reasons. If we decide you decide, I won't be here, but you decide you don't want them, but you have to have policy. There are certain things you just have to have. You don't want the whole world to have to do those things. And it's like watching paint dry, but I do it and I staff that committee. And so I respect where you're coming from, but you gotta know what you don't know too. I mean, you gotta ask, Doug. You gotta ask someone like Bob, how did this come to be? Where are we? How did we get here? Because you're right, I mean, that would be horrible if everyone had to spend all of their time doing thousands of policies, and Bob's right too. We have to get rid of some of them, but that takes review by board members because policy is a board function. So that's what I'm saying here is like, let's get some input. Again, it's gonna be your decision, but from where I sit and having worked with so many boards, I would hate to see you all do that. I would love to see you incorporate other people in things, but this is a board function. Like, this is where you decide what committees you're gonna have and what things are gonna happen outside of those committees and how you wanna engage people.
And I think that was Doug's intent too. Like, he was drafting something that, was a vision, but he really wants us to take it back and digest it and talk about it.
Absolutely,
Right.
because my takeaway, again, 15, 16 months in now, is that what it has felt like in many cases is that the committee meeting comes around and then we try to figure out if we need to have one and what we're going to talk about.
COVID's been tough.
And to me, a real active working committee has like an agenda for the year and a more kind of long view on that, and it's felt kind of forced in some cases, and it also it demands a lot of staff time to come and because even though these are board committees,
I staff four.
So you know exactly what it is, and so I think the other thing, to your point, Rebecca, is determining where is the redundancy in the committee work that then just gets repeated at the regular board meeting. And we've seen a lot of that in my time here, and so that's the efficiencies that we are trying to gain. But you all make really good points, and far be it for me to get rid of something that you all feel is working well and essential to the district.
It may not be even working well right now. That's the other thing I think for the board to look at. I mean, these last couple of years has been so strange with those things. Not that maybe it was working so well before, but it's been a different scenario. So I think I just want the board to take a look and say, especially since we have so many new people who haven't participated in that, what would we want to do with this if we want to do anything? If not, okay, don't, you know.
And I think too, like, we have commitment for reimagining, but you've had commitment like ahead of time, it's usually been in the afternoons. I worry about engagement at the elementary level, considering people are home with their kids.
Oh, do you mean for the action teams?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Lindsay, because our facilitators of those teams are sensitive to that, and they're starting to move the meeting times around into different times, and it's really kind of based on who's on the team and when are you available. So some of them have been in the evenings, and some of them are doing more asynchronous work, and some are doing virtual, and some are doing in person. But you're right, it's never going to hit everyone schedule perfectly exactly. And you're right, the committees tend to be after school, but some of them meet at 4 o'clock, and some people can't do those. The other thing I wanted to throw out about the committees, policy or whatever else we decide to keep, is I think there's a serious consideration, given the new legislation, about making all committee meetings virtual. And that way, the ability to broadcast those, instead of doing the audio recorder piece and kind of the clunkiness into that, and also to your point, Lindsay, that is so convenient to people. Something is lost when you're not in person, but again, something to consider. I'm not married to one thing or the other, but I feel like we had this temporary flexibility, and now it's become permanent, and we could even do all of our board meetings this way. But I happen to think in a setting like this, being in person is more appropriate when it's safe and we can do it. But with the committees, you know, if we have them, we may want to consider doing that.
I'm still confused on that, you know, online component. State said, no, you can't do that, we gotta be back in person. I know this is great for a whole board, but I totally agree with the committee meetings.
So now it's
But
just fully, that you can do hybrid.
They've made it through legislation, they've made it permanent.
Yeah, FOI is not happy, Tom Hennick is not happy, but the legislature did what the people really need, which is to allow us to continue to do that. But I mean, maybe Lucy, you wanna put together not a committee, but maybe a little ad hoc group to look at, like, make decisions about what you wanna do about committees instead of just.
It was out on the table back in November about what to do with the committees.
Yeah.
And the group, especially since we had 4 new members who did not have the experience with how committees were run, we decided to leave them as they were. And I mean, I don't believe we had regular meetings. A lot of them were canceled because of a lot of other stuff that was also happening. But I think people did get kind of a flavor of what it was about, what it meant to have these committee meetings. Now we're at the point where, and I'm glad Doug brought all this up, which we needed to do anyway, we're at the point now where it's time to think, what do you want to do with these committees? What do you think? And we need to have a longer, full discussion now that we have this on the table. We will continue this next time, but be thinking about it in the meantime. You know, what should we have the same structure with all the committees? Should we maybe put some of them, like we did today with the Achievement Committee, on a workshop Achievement Committee meeting just before the regular meeting where almost all of us are here. It's televised, all this information goes out to the public. Which ones should we combine or eliminate?
So I'm glad you mentioned the student achievement piece, because there's a perfect example of those get programmed on a calendar, and then we have to kind of make them fit into there. Whereas if you go with this, the board can ask for whatever, we can program that in, and it doesn't require a special meeting notice or any of those things. It just becomes part of our kind of methods. And so, you know, since we do need to vote on this the next time, I think at a minimum, you know, what remains a committee and what could go to a work session, and what can go away and kind of be absorbed into the reimagining or whatever. And it's only for 6 months, really, because whatever we do is kind of a trial run until we get to what I would think is a larger decision, which is in December. What does it look like for all of 23?
And so why didn't we adopt a calendar as required by the statute, starting in January?
Because we didn't know all this at that time.
So is that what happened in the past or not? Or
no,
we were just caught up on
typically it would have happened when we had all this.
I'm just
yeah,
asking,
when we had all this uncertainty, when we had all really what our attorneys have told us is that the statute was never really designed for a situation like ours that would set a calendar to start in July. The statute would say July 31st was the deadline for a calendar that would start July 1 for a board and end June 30th. It's all geared to the majority of districts who do a calendar that's just based to a November election and an organization in the winter, and that they forgot about people like us. So you know.
And we always had our elections in May, or appointments in May.
Right.
And our board structure, officers were always decided in July.
Right.
Everyone
No,
else
yeah,
does them in
yeah,
January,
I
we
got
do them
you.
in July. Now we've got November and May, and
Yeah.
now we have to figure out how
How
we're gonna do that.
with the
Because every
November
6 months, we
election.
can't keep changing your
Yeah.
officers, that would
Right.
just not work.
If I can circle
So
back
it's
to
gotta happen.
Rebecca's.
Bob, do you have a copy of this? I texted it to you.
I'm sorry, we could email it to Bob
I
and
sent it to him,
to
I just
Jay.
wanted to make sure he had it.
Yeah.
I think we need
I'll look
to,
at, I'll see, hold on.
I think we need to continue to think about this. Obviously, just based on the discussion, we're not really sure, and I think we just need to throw a lot of stuff out there. This is gonna take a while.
When we are members of CAPE, so, you know, Conrad or whoever's there now, I mean, reach out to them and get whatever data they have.
I got it, Lindsay.
Okay. I'm not saying it'll be perfect, but maybe we get some ideas.
I just had a couple of things I wanted to ask, just briefly, nothing just gonna involve a lot of discussion. Looking at the committee meetings that you have scheduled here, I noticed one's in the library, one is at the high school, one's at the Lyman, one's at Memorial, and one's again at the high school. Was that intended to be put on there?
It was intended to be put on that way because that's how it currently is listed, even though we haven't followed that since COVID.
Right.
So
Okay.
we were being very literal in showing you what has been.
So that's
So
another
even
piece
even
to
pieces
look
like
at.
that could be amended.
So that's
Frequency.
not a
Another
Lucy
thing-
component saving us a few minutes of driving, okay.
Yeah.
That's-
No, but that was
We
something
did
that
try to
you had
rotate
brought
that.
up.
Yeah, it
You
was
had
that way.
said,
and
why
I-
can't we do these in Middlefield? And before
Right.
COVID, we did,
Everything.
I don't remember any being at Lyman specifically, but we did have a few meetings at Memorial. Particularly one for utilization in the.
And
I
we
remember
can, if
that.
we're sticking
Yeah, I
with
remember the art
committees
room.
and we're not
Mhm.
worried about live streaming and doing those pieces, the location, I think,
Doesn't
is,
matter.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
well,
just
see,
wanted
think
to
live
add with
streaming
that
is
is,
an
my
important
understanding
piece.
is my tenure here is that even this full board meeting jumped every school.
Yes. Mhm.
But
It
that
did.
stopped because of the live streaming and not moving the
Right.
equipment around and risk breaking the equipment, and now we have more permanently installed stuff.
Yeah.
So that's
And
just
there
a
was one time
component
where
to
they
keep
did
it.
live stream it from Memorial, when Kath was still here. I don't know if you were doing that or whether.
It might have been when Rich was here, but
Yeah.
I know at some
No, you were-
point
I mean,
they
you were
were.
here, but-
Oh, at some point,
I don't think it was
we were
necessarily
advising against
you.
it because
Yeah.
the
But
cost
it
of the
was-
equipment to move it from school
It
to
was
school
when we did Bob, it was when we did the history of Lyman. I think your mom was
Right.
there.
My mom and my
It was
dad
a community
came, yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
Memorial.
That was like.
Yeah, but I
2
think
years
it was,
ago.
It was
I
a
think it was
special
live
event.
broadcast.
That was in
They
the
did a
Lyman
nice
Library.
job.
No, it wasn't.
There was something we
It
did
was
in
in
the
the
Lyman
Memorial
Library.
Library.
Yeah, it was Memorial Library.
Yes.
'Cause it was,
take
like,
that
right
back.
when I
It was
was-
Memorial
I think-
Library, yes, I remember, I was there.
maybe.
Yep.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was the Board of Education meeting work section. I was hoping, and I wanted to put this out for all of you, to have, we do generally schedule a retreat in January, but I think it would be a good idea to have one either sometime between August and October, to get together more or less at the beginning of the school year to talk about perhaps goals, directions, those types of things.
And to also
Something
have a
just
beginning
general.
budget discussion too, versus being
And that's when they
reactionary
used
at
to
the
start
end.
the
yeah.
budget.
Yeah,
discussion was
just
in
to have
October at the
something at the
retreat, yeah.
beginning where we just kind of all come together, this is where we're going for this year. And then in January, then it's kind of like a summary of where we were, where we thought we were gonna be, and an evaluation of that, and then have another, we have the evaluation at the end of the year, which, and so
Yeah.
I was kinda hoping that somewhere in there, and I don't know how you guys feel about August, if that's too early, too late, September, somewhere between the September and October meeting, I don't know if we would be ready for that, but we don't have to decide that today, just kinda keep it in your thinking.
For every year that we served with Dr. Taylor, that was exactly what he was reaffirming all the time. We need to do this. at the
Right,
beginning
right at
of
the
the
beginning
year.
of the school year.
Yeah, and that could be a standalone retreat, or you could access some of the work session time if you adopt that thing and even parcel some of that out, do an hour here and an hour there. However you guys wanna do, again, some of this is even your guys' time and trying to streamline and and stack against, we typically do retreats on Saturdays, so,
Yep.
you know, if the board members aren't available, that kind of defeats the purpose if they all can't be there, in my opinion.
It's difficult, but I think we did have the opportunity to have one in January, and I think
thought it was
everybody
good.
really liked
Yeah.
it. It gave us a good 2.5 hours to really be able to talk, and, you know, we did have an agenda, we followed the agenda, but we did have an opportunity to really talk about stuff and be able to spend that time without worrying about, oh, it's late, or we still have 15 other things to discuss, so.
And I did
And the
talk to
food was good,
and I
too.
did talk to Powder Ridge, like you asked, and they would be open to having us at Powder Ridge anytime.
Powder Ridge has a spot for us.
Yeah, they have a room.
Yeah,
there.
and that's kind of nice too, to have it outside of the regular area that we normally have it, so that it's really a retreat. It puts us all in a different frame of mind. Yes, it's open to the public. It's also advertised as such and posted as such, but, you know, it's held outside of the school areas that we're used to.
A lot of districts do that. I mean, it depends on their tradition, and you're creating a new tradition, so.
We can all go to Hawaii one time.
Yes.
That would be,
Yeah, I'm in.
anyway, do you
Okay.
think maybe we could put that in the budget for next year?
I'm just gonna throw
Anyway.
something out there. I probably might be the only one in the room that feels this way, but I think it's pretty well known that I've never been a huge fan of these committees, since I've been doing them for the last 3.5 years. Some very time consuming. I think that, I agree with Doug. I think from my experience for the last 3.5 years being on several committees, that it takes a massive amount of the staff's time, that I think they have more things they could be doing during that time frame. I do think that we have to find out as a board a way to make these things that we want to discuss much more concise and more productive. I like the ideas of the work session and maybe using those times before when we're all together, because I do find that even though, well, I mean, we come here to the board meetings, and I mean, sometimes we've spent a half an hour listening to people go over the committee reports, which takes a huge part of the actual board meeting itself. And I've always felt that unless I was at that meeting or that committee meeting, even though I could read the minutes and I could listen to sometimes a very lengthy explanation of what had transpired during the committee, as board members, I don't really feel like we're very cohesive because we weren't all there. And it's really hard with all of these different committees to feel that you really are informed when it's not being discussed as a whole group. I do think that, again, they're just really time consuming. I think that there's got to be better ways for us to be able to talk about these things. I know, even though I've loved going to student achievement for 3 years and listening to all the reports, I feel like it's something you could have done because you're already here at a board meeting and really kind of, instead of instead of you having to talk about it for 20 minutes about what she talked about, even though I sat in on the meeting for 2 hours, it was like the same information. And I just feel like unless you are someone retired, and I mean no disrespect to anybody who's retired, these committees don't work for most people on the Board of Ed unless you have a ton of time in your own personal life. Doesn't work. So I do, and I don't want to be someone on the board for my remaining time on the board to be not informed just because I can't go to 100 committees during the week or the month or the year.
And it's not supposed to work that way.
And I
It's
feel
not
like
supposed to work that way.
it needs
Yeah.
to happen more when we're all together so that it's more of a cohesive unit.
My big worry is, again, the spirit of volunteerism is gonna be waning if it is too much of a burden.
And
we
again,
know.
going with that too, because reimagining education is the important topic right now, I feel that people who are so involved in these committees are not going to give more time to reimagining education, whereas the members that are part of these committees may just come and join reimagining education because they want their voices somewhere, and then that's somewhere where they can be proactive and productive and will be really beneficial and helpful for us. So I don't know if that helps or not, but I just feel that there's a lot of reasons why I feel like I've witnessed them not working, I think, the way that they're intended to work.
You're not alone. I agree as well.
It's not to diminish the importance of the committees. I mean, certainly there's necessary and important work to do, but.
There are some that need to stay.
Again,
There's no doubt.
you know,
but there's a lot that we can talk about in these meetings. I'd rather stay
10
an
minutes,
extra
we can
hour
get-
here
Yeah.
when we're all together, as opposed to having the same discussions and getting nothing done.
Or what
We
I
gotta
find in
get
some
stuff
of the
done.
committees, it started to feel like it was just becoming like a hashing it out event, and I just don't have time for that. You know, I think it's important to be informed and to hear discussion from especially the public, but to follow almost no agenda and to just make it a session of let's just all sit down and talk. I don't really think that's the intent. I don't think that's the job of the board. I do believe there's many other committees that are happening that I think are great within the district, but I don't think that's a Board of Ed. And it almost gets a little uncomfortable because it's a fine line between what the role is of a Board of Ed member and what it's not.
Do we become micromanagers a little bit too much, perhaps through these?
More than
we
we
let other
should
people
be.
think they should be micromanagers
More than we
as
should
well.
be, yes.
Yeah.
So as you're making your deliberation and we think about the committees, I already personally feel that achievement, because that is a board goal. That's what we're here for, is to monitor the student achievement. But that information needs to not only come to us, it needs to go out to the community, as much of the community as possible, not just the parents. So I think the Achievement Committee, and I'm ready to do this like immediately, well, maybe not soon, but starting in September, that become part of our regular board meetings. Either if you need the hour for it, if it's a longer presentation like we had a little bit today, then you do it at 6 o'clock. If not, it becomes a quick 5-10 minute update during the meeting. You know, it becomes a flexible thing. With regard to the building finance committees, those are gonna be separate committees. We're gonna leave those out here. Utilization, I think going forward, might be a committee that might have to stay intact, especially as we start to look at the reconfiguration. We have to figure out how
reconfiguration is not our job.
How and where what that's gonna look like. Is it a utilization committee? Is it a board committee that does work sessions? How does that work? Because that's going to be a big issue, is what's the district gonna look like going forward? No, it is not our decision, it's the administrative decision, but it becomes a joint thing,
It's
because we kind
intertwined
of
for
all
sure,
put our,
yeah.
we all put our comments in that together. Policy, I agree that probably could be separate and then brought to the board as you had, proposed here.
Policy is labor intensive,
It's
so
got
it
a lot
should
of work
stay.
to it. It's, right.
And really, you don't wanna all have to do that.
That's common sense, that's common sense.
Yeah, that
You
is
know,
common sense.
some people might hear us talking like this and say, wow, those guys in the board, they don't know what they're talking about. No. We have a very well-oiled board here, because we all feel very comfortable expressing our thoughts, our opinions, whether we agree or disagree. And what I find by doing that is we all find that there's some commonality in all this, and eventually we pull it together. And I think having a discussion like this where everybody comes from their own point of view is exactly what boards should be doing. That's part of the discussion. So if the public feels that maybe we're a little discombobulated, that's not true. So,
Well, even if we are, we're still
or
a good,
disorganized.
it's a good
What was
group.
that?
Even if we are, it's a good group, like, that's what,
It's a good
it's messy.
group. It's
Things
an
are messy
excellent
in
group.
life, like, we've gotta have the conversations, and you're right, I mean, policy really is, it's one of those things we have to trust whoever's
Yeah.
on that policy committee, that they're not like pulling the wool over our eyes. There's other committees you wanna be involved in, like, we call them a committee of the whole sometimes, but it doesn't have to be. You just have that happen right here.
And as far as community members being part of those boards, like was just raised, I forgot who raised it.
I did.
You did. I've thought about that too. What do we do with some of the community people that we have as part of these boards? And we did have some students on some of them as well. You know, could they come and join us during the 6 to 7 o'clock workshop? That's a possibility, you know? Because we also, and Doug is right, the Reimagining Education really has a significant amount of stakeholders there, a lot more than if you added up all our committees together. Outside, people outside of the board. So, you know, that's something to consider. And I wanted to say one other thing and it fell out of my head.
You wanna say something else?
It's
I'm
on the
sorry.
table.
Having to do with the committees, but I don't know, if I remember, I'm gonna just say
You
it
want me
later.
to just-
No.
So I was thinking, and something maybe we can digest, but I was wondering if well-being committee could
That's
become a
where I was
community.
going. Oh, there you go. Sorry, that's
Could
good.
be, more of like a community conversation. So a couple of districts that I've been watching, on the shore have been having, as needed, as there's been issues or as there's been, an ask or a want for it. They've been having these community conversations, and there's a few board members that come to each one of them different times, and in the community just comes and they talk, and they're able to ask questions and really get engaged in what is going on and what are the concerns. And I'm wondering if a standalone committee isn't necessarily good for the board, because maybe
Agreed.
aren't times that there I guess there's always issues, but maybe there aren't times where there's a core need for it.
Well, why
So-
can't that just be articulated at a normal board meeting? Like if Doug knows there's an incident going on, or we know there's something going on, then it can't be just discussed as part of our board meeting, saying our well-being, this is what's going on, there's been this issue or that issue, and we address it.
I think it does give a time for, especially some of, like.
People can still come.
Well, they
I
can
know, but
come, mostly
sitting
we
in-
can't
sitting-
talk about it though,
yeah,
and they need
sitting
to
in
understand
well-being,
the
it really
difference
has helped
between
a
these
lot of the
things.
teachers
And
and the-
because they become very long meetings.
Yeah, and we don't get any business.
And we get
done.
nothing
We need
done.
to look at
Nothing
well-being and what its purpose is and how it's going to be, or if it's going to be.
Yeah, if I could comment to
conducted.
Lindsay's point, and I think I put this in that super long document I sent you guys. We had a team, my last 3 years in Bedford, called Advisory, and it was like 25% learners. And it had stakeholders from all of our employee groups and our parent groups, and we had a single board member, I think it was the chair or the secretary, would come, and that was our be-all and end-all for having hard conversations with a group about hard issues. Now, it's not exactly what you described, because that wouldn't be an open to the community group.
Right.
Because it wouldn't be a board committee that had to be, because it was a working group of people that wanted to be there, but they would develop a rapport with each other, and they do a lot of their work in small groups.
And I
Kinda
think
like-
that's kind of more what I was trying to
yeah,
articulate.
yeah, and I advocate for that. However, we got these reimagining teams out there, and if we have all these committees, I couldn't ethically launch that and feel like all these things are competing with the same people. We're all gonna be like borrowing from each other. So I'm willing to go there at some point if the committees get ratcheted down, but I don't wanna do anything that takes away. And also, you know, that was more of a superintendent kind of staff facilitated, where the board jumped into it. If the board wants to be more hands-on in some of this work, but, you know, to John's point, those are discussions, and those would take hour and a half, and so people have to commit to want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And that's a little different than just having a public hearing or a public comment, or even a conversation here. And I think the challenge with the committees is some of them lie somewhere in between that space. And sometimes there's the feeling that not a lot is getting done. On the other hand, there's been some great work done in these committees that I've seen since I've been here. So we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think it's more trying to,
I can tell you too, because I was the first chair of that. Kath had asked me to start that committee, and you could probably verify for me too, Corey, because you were a lot of those. Or Mary Ellen was too, but it was Kath who came up with the agenda. It was her. This is what we want to share with you. This is you know. So somehow it became me having to come up with the agenda when I don't know what we want to talk about. I'm not sure what, you know.
Right,
so
it wasn't an open
I agree
forum.
with you that
It
it
was-
somehow
it was-
snowed falls into what it was not originally intended.
What we did in
Okay.
Bedford was, you know, one was on budget, and getting that group's input on budget, not just what do they want, but letting them kind of discuss a lot of the things that we discuss here, and it helped us get our budgets forward, because then they would go back and share with the community. Or if we had an equity or a racial incident, like we had a group already there that we could go to and say, how do you guys think we should handle this?
Right.
But it didn't have to be, you know, live streamed and any of that, and
And I think it's hard too, what bugged me, and I'm not on the committee, but I don't think I've missed any of them for the well-being, but I felt like sometimes we were putting our staff in a position where they didn't know what topics were gonna be coming up, and I didn't like having to see our principals sit there and be put on the spot with something that they couldn't digest, and
Yep.
it's not fair.
No.
And not only that,
It's not their job.
they would sit here and we have people that would just go on for years saying that we've been having this problem for years with no specific examples of just going on and on and on and on. And that put our staff, a lot of our staff, not knowing what to say. And that doesn't put Doug in a good situation either, you know, and I'll be the first one to say it. Yeah, you've been tossed into something. And, but in the same token though, we need to have, we just need to address these issues and be productive. We can't just keep coming to these meetings and these sub-meetings and things like that without getting things done.
Right.
Because it just seems like we keep spinning our wheels, and nobody wants to hear that.
No.
Nobody wants to hear, they want
And
results.
then we come here and we talk about it. What
We
was
talk
discussed
about
at
it,
the
talk
meeting,
about it,
and
talk
then
about it,
we just
like the
talk
John
about it
Lymon
again,
thing,
right?
and you know, our budget, and this, and that. We just need to be able to sit down and hash things out and just get them
Bob,
done.
you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
He's the one who
You
said
wanna talk?
that at the last meeting about.
Sure.
Let's just get stuff done.
You don't have to unless there's something.
Yeah,
And that
Yeah,
earlier,
I'll talk, but the policy, the board established 4 goals several years ago of student achievement, finance, engagement, and well-being. And as part of that goal of well-being, they established the well-being committee as their outreach program in order to create an avenue for the board to actually evaluate what was going on in the schools and whether or not there was a sense. We actually tried to do a survey, the union had an argument with it, of how things were going and whether or not the well-being committee. So the well-being committee was really established to evaluate and to work with the status of well-being within the community, within the classroom, and within the teachers. And so the agendas have been broad in order to get discussion, and that's why teachers are put on it and students are put on it. And it's basically 2 years, because Nora was the first student, and then COVID hit. So we've been trying to manage the well-being committee. The first couple of years we talked about how are we going to deal with COVID and the well-being, and the students and teachers came up with we should have Wednesdays off. You know, we should work on those kinds of things. So there's been an agenda, but the agenda is really kind of broad, you know, and now with the racial issues, it gives the chance for a discussion between board members, teachers, faculty, and family members without having to have the board sit there, take questions, and not have any answers. So I think that committee, granted, has not a defined agenda. We'll never have a defined agenda, but the agenda really should be how are things going and what can we do about it. So that's where it came from. That's why it's there. That's where it's been going. And I'm sorry, Maura, if you didn't have more instruction. It's probably my fault.
No.
Anyway,
Bob,
so that's where it is. And, you know, I think that the committee has produced results to deal with the racial issue that have been positive, that the board couldn't do on its own, sitting in a meeting not answering questions.
And I think that my point with that is, I think it puts some board members along with staff, in a very touchy situation, having it be a laid-back conversation with almost to the point where we are made to respond on behalf of the entire board for discussion. So I think that for some people, maybe it's comfortable, and for some people, it's not very comfortable. And Lucy and I have already experienced that ourselves once before.
I just think that's part of our role as board members too.
Thank you for the history. I think that's important as we sit here as a group and decide as a group what we might want to see going forward, or how it looks.
I mean, the history is important. I think that to Maura's point though, how do we draw the distinction when we say to people, look, you know, we're trying to communicate to people, we can't know about these things, we can't talk about them in this way, but we're having a community conversation with you through a committee. I'm not saying, Bob, at all that that shouldn't be happening, and those things, that there were some things that came out of that. It's just really rough that that's a board committee that those things are coming out of, because that's not really
with board members who are
appropriate.
half informed with the information, because let's face it, most of us don't even know the full
We
story
shouldn't.
or
Well,
the
most
full
of us can't
information
know. We
about
shouldn't
any
know.
of it. So we're
So that's a
being
big
put in
part
a
of it as well. You
position
can't know half
to
this
speak
stuff.
for it, and I just feel there are many times where I have felt uncomfortable. I'm glad you don't, Bob. Thank you.
No, that's great that you don't. I mean, I just think that is a difficult situation overall, which is like, so you're sitting in this committee meeting, and now people are like, oh, well, you must know, and this, and
We
then they
don't.
come to the board and they're like, why don't you know? And they send us these emails. I'm just like, we don't want to know this. Don't tell us these things about your
Well,
kids.
not that we don't
And
want
again,
to
that
know.
gets
Like, not that we don't want to take
We
care
can't.
of it,
Right.
but there are
There's
reasons
legalities.
for us
There's
not to
legalities.
know.
Again, that gets into what is the board's role
Exactly.
and what isn't the
Yeah,
board's role.
exactly.
And I think this is a great discussion, because what it points out is the fact that this well-being, the purpose, and what it's gonna look like going forward is something that we have to figure out at some point. So, I mean, we're obviously not gonna decide it tonight, so we've gotten a good start on it. And if it's okay with all of you, I'd kinda like to move on, and, you know, you've got a lot to digest. Be thinking about it, jotting stuff down. Be careful if you send out emails to everybody, which is okay as long as we don't reply all when you go back. We have to be careful about that. We don't have Norm that reminds us all the time, but I still hear him. You can't do it, you know.
Just so I can point out too,
He's still there.
for Amanda's email today, I didn't reply all. I just,
Oh, no.
I
Oh, no, I'm not saying
sent a
that
new
you
email,
did.
but I
Right.
purposely did that because I've learned my lesson after 3
We
years.
just, I was probably one of
Not to
the
reply all.
biggest culprits of that.
I just want to make
because-
sure that's okay to do, like,
Yeah.
you could tell it was in response to her email, but it's not.
It
Right.
is, as long
You have to be
as
careful.
there aren't a series of those. It's not just about hitting reply all, it's about
Continuing
continuing conversations with the
Okay.
whole board that could be
Right.
viewed as a meeting.
As a meeting.
A meeting under a different thing.
Got it.
And I don't think one is gonna do
Okay.
it, but it's one
How
of the
do
things
how
they,
do you agree with each other on a board email?
you're never supposed to do
Or-
that. That would be considered
It's
a,
it's been my question for years.
yeah,
Like,
that would
how
be
do you
considered an
ever-
illegal action by a
Right,
board.
we're supposed to
You
discuss those
can't
things in
agree.
public.
Okay.
But it's something that you bring up, like, we're all here.
Right.
Or we
Yeah.
have a
Right.
workshop before our regular meetings.
Workshops will be
That's
great.
why those
Workshops
workshops are
will
so
be
good,
very
because they're
beneficial.
not, they're not so pigeonholed like our
high-five you.
meetings are, so.
I just wanted
okay.
to say one thing
Did you
about
have
the
anything else?
well-being committee.
No, I'm done.
We do have a
I
district
think I've said enough.
climate committee, and we have school climate committees,
Yes.
that we meet regularly, and they have not been aligned with the well-being committee, at least not since I've been in my position.
I wonder if we'd be more beneficial
And-
being invited or coming to one of those.
Yeah,
What do
absolutely.
you mean by
Or-
aligned? What do you mean by aligned?
There-
Like the
we have to meet
Yep.
as for school climates, school climate committee, and then a district climate committee on a regular basis. But what we talk about in the school and district climate committee hasn't gotten reported out to the Board of Ed or the Wellbeing Committee.
So maybe that's.
And you're,
It's
and
already
those meetings are.
happening.
It has to happen.
They're already happening,
Absolutely.
and people think
And
nobody's
so,
doing
yes,
anything.
and
or
I-
it's-
So
no,
with that said,
exactly. Yes.
so with that said.
So just like the achievement committee,
Yeah.
it happens,
Yeah.
it's just, and then it's reported out at the Board of Ed. It
Right.
never has been reported out at the Board of Ed, because it's just,
Well, then
since
how do we know
I've
what's
sat
going
here.
on if that's not being articulated?
To Jen's point.
Ken, we did go over the school climate report at our well-being committee.
Yeah, reports are different than being part of the conversation, though.
But is that classified, like, is the information that you discuss, is it, classified is not the right word, but it's.
Confidential.
Yeah.
It could, yeah, I mean, there's certainly confidential information, but there's
Right.
probably a way to report out on it, to share with the board and the public of, happenings and things that are going on, things that we're looking at, that we have to look at for state reports, such as attendance and engagement and those things, that can be reported out at the meeting as well, or at a work session.
How often do you guys meet with us?
The school meetings are quarterly.
Okay.
And we meet twice a year as a district, at least, and more if needed.
Okay, well, that's good to know too. again, put that all into the basket of what well-being is gonna look like, and.
Yeah, and again, there's a lot of overlap.
And again, those are the things that are important to us.
Right.
Not
There's
necessarily what-
also, there's
The rest
also,
of this is
not to
going.
put us out into a million places, but there are also PTO meetings if you wanna know what's going on in the individual schools as well.
The thing is, I
mean,
think to
you look at
Jen's
the
point,
climate of
it's
what's
really
going on in
important
the
is
school.
that the public thinks that nothing's being done. The public's perception somehow, it's not unique to here, but is that nothing's being done. I mean, we've got our mayor and where I work is like putting this whole bullying thing together because the schools aren't doing anything about it, right? So that there are things happening on the ground is something we definitely need to highlight. I think that's
Yeah, but when those
my
individual-
takeaway.
But when
from
those
what you said.
individual incidents occur, that's when we should be informed, whether it be by a staff member or by Doug.
Informed
And
of
that's
what?
when of an incident, if
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what you're talking about. Then that's when we should be discussing them. Otherwise, having what they're discussing quarterly and biannually is when they should be discussed here. And if they're pressing issues, that's when we discuss them. To continually just come in here and just have people just constantly going over the
Yeah,
same
no.
thing over and over again, when that's not what's going on in the school, and the climate in the school is not
What people are
representative of
saying.
what's actually going on,
Yeah.
then we're just spinning our wheels and again, not getting things done.
Agreed, 100%.
Well, and the wrong impression is going out, which is
It-
why
and
it was
that's
so good
the
to see.
biggest problem.
It was so good to see the students here, because that's what it's all about. If you wanna know what the schools are like and what's going on, they're going to tell you, because they're right in the middle. Okay, should we move on?
I'm done. Kim?
Okay. Thank you, great discussion, great discussion. Right there. Kim, folders mean a long time.
So I put this off for the past couple of meetings just because we had a lot of other things going on. And I know it's getting late, I'm sorry, but I think I really have
No,
to
we're
talk
here now,
about
go
this.
ahead.
We're
here now. You know, dairy
I'll
service
be
closed,
quick.
keep going.
Yeah, absolutely, no ice cream. Don't forget, we have an executive session.
So, for the
can't
past
forget.
2 years, USDA has offered waivers for free lunch, which we have taken advantage of, and fed our students. And with that came an escalated reimbursement rate. So, more than what we charge students when they're, regular paying lunch. The omnibus, there was a bill in Congress to extend that, and that was not included to extend the waivers for another year. So they looked upon the states, CASBO, my business managers group, SNAC, a bunch of organizations lobbied for the state of Connecticut to help because they are they are expecting some future surpluses in future years. That came in wet with no action, except for to say it didn't get included in the budget. However, $30 million was set aside for ARPA funds, not our ARPA funds, state ARPA funds, to help districts if they wanted to offer, maybe not even offer free lunch.
No, you can't hear me? You can't hear? Kim,
Oh, let's put him over by Kim.
Kim is talking.
But also, and I say this because, with supply chain issues and with costs of everything, when we revert back to the lower reimbursement rates, effective July 1, we're not gonna have enough money to pay the food service bills. That's not unique to RSD13, and that's been a problem in food service, programs for years. We've done a very, very good job here, credit to Mark Basil, that we've actually done better than a lot of districts in managing that. But we met, and he really, feels that we're not gonna be able to do it. So here's the thing I'm just bringing to you tonight is that I'm hoping that for next June, the June 8th meeting, we might have a little more information from the state. When we reach out to the state and ask them how they're gonna distribute that $30 million, they say, we don't really know yet. We don't know what the intent of it was, and we'll let you know. So with that said, if we know that we can get some help, that's great. If we're not going to be getting any help, I might be asking you to consider raising lunch prices. And I'll have 2 different options that we'll go over. Mark did a great deal of work and research on this. The last time we raised prices was in 2016. We went up 50 cents. And we also have had, with the larger reimbursement rate, and every student that eats, we're getting the larger rate, we've been able to build up a little bit of funds in the school lunch program account, but we also have such aged equipment. So Mark is asking if we might be able to funnel some of that money into buying pieces of equipment that, sneeze guards and warmers and things like that that are, 35 plus years old or just not working anymore. So, but if we're not going to be getting any help from the board to supplement if we don't raise prices, and if we're not going to get any help from the state, we can't reinvest that money in equipment because we're going to need to pay the bills with it. So I'll just be coming to you June 8th, and we'll talk about this, and, maybe I'll need a decision by then, maybe not, maybe it can happen, over the summer, as long as we have time to let parents know if we're gonna increase the prices.
So can I have a clarifying question? Yeah. Because I felt like that was a lot of words and I'm getting tired. So the last 2 years, because of COVID, if your child gets lunch, they are not paying.
Correct.
But that's gonna stop?
That stops at June 30th, yes.
For sure. Okay, so starting August, whatever, when they go back to school.
I say July 1, but when the kids come back to school.
Right at the time when people are being squeezed the most.
Well, that's
What sense
it,
does
right,
make?
that's it. So we've done a lot of lobbying, we've written letters, and we've asked, to ease that, to which they replied they would have the $30 million in the ARPA funds, but we're not sure how that's gonna work out. In this district, we've also applied, a few months ago, Mark came to me with a grant for food service equipment. So we applied, we did a ton of work, we sent it in, and we didn't get a penny. Because we're fortunate that we're not in a high need district, but then that also, now we have 30-something-year-old equipment, so that we have to pay for. So having said that, if it's gonna follow that criteria, we're probably gonna be one of the last ones, or what we're gonna get isn't gonna make a dent in it. So just food for thought, no pun intended, but.
I like the way you did that.
Yeah, that was
good,
really
Kim.
brilliant,
That was
actually.
actually brilliant.
Yeah.
I didn't even write that down.
Good for you.
We've been practicing
Kim
that
rocking
all
it.
day.
I was just trying to see who was awake. John's on it tonight.
The challenge that Mark faces, though, is, especially at the high school level, you need to produce, kids are critiques of food, particularly as they get older, and with the prices of everything, to create appealing food that the kids will talk about, want to buy at the increased rate, is more difficult for us. It's a very, very challenging thing.
And I think when food is free, parents will say you're gonna eat it whether you like it or not, or the kid's gonna take it, right?
I do that.
When they're paying for it, they're
I
gonna say, I don't really like that, I'm gonna take lunch or whatever, so it is hard. And especially with the whole, nutritional standards and
Yeah,
stuff,
those are
kids don't
tough.
wanna eat.
They don't wanna eat that.
We talk about all the time, just stopping the bleeding of losing enrollment, particularly at Cogganchog. Food can be a way, if it gets as good as we could possibly make it, and
Didn't we used to be
affordable,
one
but
of the
still
highest
maintained.
rated?
Well,
Yes.
and if.
Kids talk about stuff
Brian
like
told me
that.
that
How's
when
the
I started
food
on the
there?
board,
They do.
yeah.
We don't have to participate in National School Lunch, and so we would not be held to the nutrition standards. We can do whatever we want. We can sell French fries at, that's the only meal. But the problem with that is then you're not gonna get your reimbursement, and they give a little supplement, and so, it's gonna be very expensive.
Is there anything else?
That's all
I have a quick question. I'm sorry, I know it's getting late, but what's going on at Memorial? Because I drive there every day. Like, what are they working on? Are they working on the roof?
Oh, no, well, there's
Like,
supplies
there's a
being
dumpster
delivered
and then
there.
there's a.
Yeah, yep,
Is that for the
we're
roof?
prepping for it, yep.
Okay. Just that, just-
Item number 11,
Well, like
B.
where we turn around.
We're talking about the field trip request, the high school field trip request to Costa Rica, which was sent out to us. We need a vote to approve that field trip request. I guess it's on February 15th, 2023.
Has this trip been taken before?
Well, can we put a motion on the floor first and then we can
Okay,
talk about it?
I have lots of
Okay.
questions.
Yeah, let's do it that way.
Okay.
So, because this one we can do that.
I'll make that motion.
So Lindsay will make the motion to approve the request, and a second by
I'll second it.
John. Okay, now we can have a discussion.
Now you can
Okay.
talk.
Has this trip happened before?
I don't know that answer. Does anyone know that?
I don't think so.
I don't feel
No,
like I've ever
I
heard of
don't
it.
have-
I've
Bob,
never.
does
Do
Bob
they need
remember?
chaperones?
My phone's over.
I'm going.
Let's, oh, hold on.
Bob says yes.
When?
Bob says
When
yes.
did it?
Go ahead. I don't remember.
All right, go.
It's happened before, probably 5 years ago.
Okay.
Pre-COVID.
And the other.
Good memory.
The question I had was that it's requesting 3 days, but if you read the brochure, it says 8 days.
Who's it for, too, by the way?
Yeah. High school.
Which,
Spanish.
Spanish.
High school
Spanish.
Spanish.
Anybody in high
Yeah,
school?
there was a whole
Espanol.
thing that was listed.
Spanish.
Yeah.
oh, Spanish.
But
This trip's been going on for years. My niece graduated 15 years ago, I don't remember she lost her phone on that trip.
Costa Rica.
But it's a Spanish honors group or Spanish club do. It's expensive. There's no other way that there's no reimbursement for kids who can't afford it. But there is, it's been going on for quite some time. It's just been stopped for probably the last 5
Not
years.
Costa Rica, but definitely a Spanish
Right.
trip.
It may be a longer trip, but it says the students are only gonna be missing 3 days from school.
Oh, is that what it says?
Yeah,
Is it during
that's what it
break or
says here.
something?
So it's during President's
So
Day?
it's a
Probably
longer,
the
long weekend, yeah.
well, February 15th to February 22nd.
To Mexico or something, so it doesn't, I guess, really.
So
So
they're
looking
gonna
for approval,
experience.
looking for approval to
Never
go.
been able to do it.
They'll look, yes, yeah, which they have to.
But not the
for
money,
long ones.
it's out of pocket.
Do the French,
Well,
Oh,
like,
we
do
can't-
all the other
we
groups
can't afford
could do a
it.
trip
Okay.
anywhere,
I think
or is
that's
it the only
Costa
group
Rica.
that does a trip like this?
Well, we approved the trip to Virginia when the kids just went down.
No, I mean,
there.
like, for language, or for,
Oh,
this
for
just seems like an
language.
extreme trip to me.
This
They've
been
always
some
gone
in the
somewhere.
past.
Mrs. Horn used to take, I think it started in Mexico, and like, they've been to Puerto Rico, and so those are
Montreal.
closer. I mean, Mrs. Horn's been a long time since she's been here, but like Bob said, the trips for the Spanish group have been going on for a really, really long time. It's just the location, I think, might be different.
I think it's a great educational experience.
It's immersion.
It's immersion.
Yeah, they had quite a, if you have an opportunity to go back and look at the
I just always
materials
feel bad
that
for the kids
Meg
that can't
sent,
afford $3,000.
there's quite an explanation about what the whole itinerary is all listed there.
There's a
I only
curriculum that
copied
goes
just the
along.
front
Yeah, there
page.
is a curriculum.
It's part of our global.
Yep. The only question that I had is, I know Norm always puts a statement, Norm Hicks always would put a statement on these field trip request forms. I don't know the exact wording, and I don't see it written on here, and I wasn't sure if it was something that we automatically
Short of
put
a
on these.
Department of Homeland Security incident, that would,
Yeah, that one.
would be
Yeah, something
grounds for
about
canceling
that.
it.
Pending national crisis or
Yeah.
something to
Yeah.
that effect.
Yeah, and so if they could kind of just automatically put that on these
I
field
thought
trip
we
request
addressed that through
forms.
policy, and so
Is
it's
it
no
in-
longer on the form. That's what I recall
I
the time
thought
since
so,
I've
too.
been here.
Just checking.
It's been addressed and it's in the standard form. It should be on every form.
Oh,
So
'cause
maybe
I
they're
didn't
using
see
an
it.
older form.
Yeah, I didn't see it on this one, that's why I was looking for
Okay.
it. Okay, that was my only question. Any other thoughts, questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good, that's done.
Just on the topic of that, like if Maura just said it, like how many I guess we don't know it, but how many kids can't afford to go on that trip that are in that class? Like, I'd like to find it out maybe later.
I would,
That's
say
a
I'm
little
just concerned, I feel like, especially in this
Kind of in the
time and
weeds,
age of just
tried to
finances for
mistake
families,
Guys.
I just feel really bad when we offer some things like this, unless we were to know, I think you just mentioned there is, a way for them to have the trip, I'm sure it's not paid in full, but how much do these kids who can't afford the trip, how much is allotted to them to pay for the trip? Or is it paid in full?
So that.
And I'd
form
be interested, like
specifically
Lindsay
says
would
there's
say,
no-
in, like, how many kids have participated in the past? I mean, is it a class of 15 kids and only 5 go?
Really in the weeds here.
This one says there's no funding available on
We are
this,
in the weeds.
for those who cannot pay this particular one.
I think we can get those answers and maybe
Okay.
email
I
them
just-
out.
I just
I
assumed
don't know
that, yeah.
specifically if we're gonna know
Well, especially
who,
'cause it's so
who
long
can
ago.
afford it and who can't, because
No,
like,
I
I don't know
would
how
say,
you
like,
would
more
know that.
history of that.
Some people might just not wanna go, or their parents just say, no, you're not going.
Which-
Even if they could afford it, they're just choosing not to.
I mean, there's kids that aren't going on the 7th grade trip next week because it was too expensive.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at, like, I feel like a lot of these trips, Disney.
So if we know that
Virginia,
these things are
like-
going on, or they're gonna happen, maybe they should start doing some fundraising.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
for everyone
The
that
kids
might not be
usually-
able
Yeah.
to
They
afford a
usually
trip,
do.
senior trip, all of
To
those
offset
things.
some of those
Yep.
costs.
But this is
They
such
have
a
so
huge
much that
Spanish
problem.
honors, it might be something that, it's a small group, you know, maybe they need some help from the school fundraising.
Certainly if they do some type of fundraising, they can reduce that.
It needs to
so
be
that
some sort of an
kids that can't-
anonymous outreach to say, I want to, won't be able to, and sort of keep that group separate and then see what can be done for them. And it's always difficult. I mean, I just reflect back on our senior trip to Washington DC, and
Yeah.
I had to save my $3.37 an hour if I wanted to go.
And even, my mom was even on the trip, and I still had to save my summer money to
Yeah,
go.
I mean, it was a commitment.
And I think it
Well,
truly
I
looks
think-
at like what an immersion that is and how much that ties into the
From it is really my main question.
But do we not provide other kids that opportunity because not everybody's gonna benefit from it? Or do we look at how do we raise funds, or how do they raise funds to make that offset? Do we just not offer it because some kids can't go? I don't know.
I think moving
I
forward.
think, I just would like more
Well,
information.
we'll let Doug kind of give us a little background on that.
Yeah,
if
I
he
can,
or
I can see
follow
what we
up
can come
what
up
we
with. I
have, you
think,
know.
again, I don't know how we do it here exactly, but I think the spirit of having these things approved is more so you all know, and you're kind of approving the safety of an overnight.
Yeah.
I don't think it's designed to dissect every trip.
No,
and
it's
exact-
definitely
it's
not.
already been
It's
approved.
definitely
not.
I just would like more information.
No,
I
no,
mean,
that's
all.
fine, and maybe we should start putting that in the actual request or change the form.
Yeah.
When we talk about, having every kid feel like there's a place
It's
and being
important, yeah.
included.
Right.
That's
you're
again
right.
where I
Well-being of
think
every
they need to
child,
have an
but
outlet
we
to say,
exclude
I can
people
anonymously,
because of
along
that
with, parental guidance, I'd like to go somehow, how are we gonna be able to make this happen? And, it's not to just say it's a free-for-all, but
who pays for the
there's
chaperones
gotta be
on
that
trip?
outlet.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too, like how many staff members and.
It says 1-to-6 ratio.
Yeah, and I think at this higher level that you guys are talking
So I
about,
guess
that's
it would be,
appropriate.
yeah,
Like,
like I
what
would
can we,
follow up
what kind of direction can we give to the staff to say, hey, here are the kind of things we wanna know, cause we wanna do exactly what you said, Jamie. Our policy, our approach is every kid feels like they can belong, so what do we need to do? Do we need to prioritize more funding? Do we need to help them raise money? Do we have a scholarship? Like, what at our high level do we do, and what kind of message do we send to the staff about, because we do, like, you're right, Maura, you're right, John, you're right, all of you, like, we care about that. That's part of our gig, that's part of this whole thing.
I fear the divide is gonna be even greater when it comes to economics as we go through
There's
this
already
malaise.
huge
Yep.
divide.
There's gonna be the haves and have-nots, and there's gonna be a pretty wide gap.
It's
and
getting bigger all
That
the
is
time.
not gonna be helpful to our situation at all.
I mean, unfortunately, we've had discussion on it, so saying moving forward, that's something that if we know that this trip is coming up in February, now that we're discussing it now, there should be fundraisers that,
Well, I
or at
think
least
we
a
can
number
approve it,
of
but I'd
who's
like some
going.
follow-up on it, just to know.
And how many
Sure.
employees we're paying for to go also.
Right.
Because it
Maybe
does
they should
depend on
have
the
a cost.
ratio.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Maybe we have to look at the structure, like you said, like maybe we've had a structure for a long time that maybe isn't appropriate any longer, that we have to task the staff to say, hey, here are our values, bring us something back that is in keeping with our values around this.
Okay, moving on, item 11C, Pension Committee membership discussion. I'm good, I know. Don't
So,
say.
I can talk.
You need some members,
So
I
we
know.
need 3 members.
Three members.
Pension committee, we talked about a little bit earlier. It's really an administrative and operational committee, not necessarily a board committee. And we meet twice a year by the board, the bylaws, purpose and responsibility. So we have 2 out of 5 members, and we don't have a quorum, so we can't meet until we get 3 members.
By the end of the week, we'll get you some names.
Okay, great. So I have 1 2-year term open and 2 1-year terms
I'll do
open.
it.
So if you know of anybody, not even board members, it's community members. I think Rebecca was on it.
I was, and then what happened
One
was,
time.
it
He
was
just did it
before,
all
when
week.
you,
Just
when
did
you
it
got
all
here,
pension.
it was better, but I used to get these notices like so
Last
far ahead of
minute.
time that like,
Oh.
and it wasn't calendared, and then I'd be like, oh my God, did I miss that?
Yeah.
I didn't even know.
I saw
Yeah,
John's
so-
hand up, are you volunteering?
100%.
Oh,
awesome.
all right, there's one.
He was very
Kick us
spirited
back.
doing it for his own
I do
work
our
this
pen-
time.
I do our
You want
pension
the
1
one-year
minute.
term?
And then took it out on
or
me.
1 year? You want a 2-year term?
A 2-year or 1-year term?
I'll do
6
the
year.
two.
Oh yeah, he's in, he's in.
I'm here for another 3.5.
Thank
So
you.
he's in the
Well,
3-year term?
Might as well do something while I'm here.
Right. I wouldn't listen to people complain.
Thank you, see, it's always good to put
And
it out there,
if
that's
you know
one,
of
now we
anybody
got 2
else,
more,
there's a
and I do
form
have
that went around
I
that
have
you
one
just
that's
fill
for
it
Kim,
out.
Lindsay
I
will do
do
it.
have one,
Lindsay will do
from
it.
Durham, and
Well,
I
have
just
to
need,
ask them first.
I have to ask him, but I think he'd be really good for it, so I'll get that to you.
I have
It's
to
very
ask them,
exciting,
it'll
thank
tell
you.
So we will, by the end of the week.
Great,
I
thank
promise.
you.
Good.
That's
I'm gonna
amazing.
get that to
Good to
John.
see Kim.
Just let me know
That'd
when
be
you're
the best part of
finished.
it.
They're quick meetings and they're only twice a year unless there's an issue, and then we.
And it's
then we-
only twice a year, I think you
Yep.
said.
Get her
twice a
done.
year.
I like those
So
committees.
there you
Oh yeah, this keeps going
Okay,
on.
next
you.
item is communications, and because I was so well put together, I typed it up. There weren't that many letters, and I left it
I'm sorry, I
home.
missed that. Can you
So
say
the
that?
only names I
Can you
could
say that
remember
again?
at this point, so I'll put them on next time, is I know I got And everyone got copies except for one that was sent directly to Kim, because it was a question that related to the buses. Nick Fiella and Christine Garachi had talked about the budget. I know there are one or two other people, I'm sorry, I can't remember their names. Danya had asked about some missing minutes for the May 11th, 22 meeting. And then Katie Checo had asked about bus routes, for next year, which I referred to Kim. So I'm sorry about the other two people I missed, but I'll get them next time.
One was Maya list, I remember, about the budget. I'm just-
Probably, yeah, I can't see it, and I bet you it's on top of my printer. That's one of two things I left home. Okay, our next board meeting is June 8th at 7 PM. They're here, and the last thing is public comment, and seeing no public, we'll go on to item number 15, which is we would need a motion to go into executive session to discuss the superintendent's evaluation.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
So made by Lindsay and John, and seconded by John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Okay, so we are.
Are we going in the room, or is everyone leaving?
I think everyone's just gonna leave, because we're done with the
If
live
you want to
stream.
take 2-3 minutes, we'll remove the tech.
And maybe if anyone needs a restroom break,